to order. If you'll please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic of one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I have roll call, please, Cindy.
Here.
Here. Here. Here. Here. Here. Thank you very much for that. We are at the first citizen and community group comment, and I have 3 in front of me here. Tom, we're going to have you come up right at the beginning here. I've stopped with the last name because I see you every week now.
Tom is fine. So Tom McEnany, and I know I'm beating the drum here because this is the same subject I've been coming to you with, but I keep getting validated over and over and over again about the subject of safety and security throughout communities across this nation, especially when illegals are beating down cops, shooting people. That just brings it home even that much more for everybody to be vigilant in every way, shape, and form throughout their entire life. Have your head on a swivel. Make sure that you take good care of your family. I live by an old saying, "Je pray," which means I am ready. And I wish that everybody else is as ready as I am to protect your loved ones and your community. And I will beat this drum to as many platforms as I can possibly do so. And this is just, this is a very, very important subject, and it's very deeply rooted in me. And with that, I will say, just let's all be ready.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Sherry Fox.
Sherry Fox Hames, newest member to the DEC.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make a request to you, Mayor, and the city. We at the DEC request to add language which allows us to support the publication of events within the city limits of Estacada, but outside of the downtown area within our notification platforms. For example, social media, door hangers, e-newsletter, water bill inserts, newspaper alike. We will require the event notification be submitted to us no later than 6 weeks prior to the event, and it must meet the City of Estacada guidelines for publication approval. In turn, the DEC can provide the approved event notification to the local Chamber of Commerce, Parks and Rec, and Arts Commission for publication as well. Any questions?
Pretty self-evident there.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. What do we need to do on that? Is this something then we can turn over to Melanie?
I think city staff can.
Yes,
Yeah.
I will get some more details from the DEC on exactly how that process would work, and we'll work that out. Yeah.
I'd just like to say thank you for doing it. Communication is something we're trying to work on as part of our council goals. So it's good to see the committee stepping up to do that as well. So thank you.
All right. Next, we have Mary Etheridge. That's all right.
I'm a very nervous speaker. Well, Councilman, it's good to see you.
See you.
Would you mind
Could you
using
use-
the microphone,
Yeah,
please?
thank you. Sorry.
Hello, Councilman. I'm good. It's good to see you. I'm looking at Stuart Potter. He's my better half over there that was in the CBs, and he's a very good, in the CBs, he was a crane operator, and he also is very good with building and knowing what's going on in subdivisions, building, etc. So I'm sorry in the past that if you guys feel like I've been yelling at you or talking very strongly, because there's been developments that have happened, and right now they're right on Lawrence Road. There's 8 homes that are up from a blind curve, and they sit right on the development. And so it's very dangerous if those homes back up to Lawrence Road, and somebody could get, those homes, if they are developed, will be very dangerous. They're going to have kids running out into the road and dogs running out into the road. And so Ms. Taylor has had several occasions where she has gone to, the neighbors have said on Woodland Road that she's gone up to, I'm sorry, you guys, I felt like I needed a little bit more time. I don't know if there's able to do comments towards the end of this session.
Sure, we could bump you to the next community group comment if you'd like. and give you a little
Please,
more time.
please,
Would that be
yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Still be
I'm trying-
just 3 minutes.
Yeah, it'd be
Still
3
just
minutes, but it gives
Okay,
you more
yeah,
time.
please, we'll start again.
All right.
If these comments are about the Curran Creek Estates Phase 3 subdivision, then you could speak during the public hearing for that subdivision.
Okay,
Sure.
thank you.
Yeah. Oh, you're okay. Okay, next I have Christy Blair.
I am here to make a comment on agenda item number, I think it's number 7, I think, no, it's number 6. And the Parks and Rec Committee wanting to be able to make decisions without the approval of the city council, and that there being a vote on that tonight. I know that you have heard from our neighborhood and our and the displeasure of the thought of having a splash pad put into the park in our area, the green space. Back in, I think it was November, maybe October of 2022, the city council voted and said that they were in agreement that the splash pad should not be put into Campanella Estates. And now it has been brought up again to be put in Campanella Estates. And I feel that this agenda item is a way to backdoor and override the city council's decision to exclude Campanella from one of the possibilities for the splash pad. So I think that there has been a lot of backdooring in the last several months with Campanella being brought up again, and then our fight again to not have a splash pad in our neighborhood after the city council had already voted over a year ago.
Council? Okay, we're gonna talk about it later on. That's all that I have in front of me right now. Oh, you got one, okay. That's all right, that's all right.
Mine's just really quick, because I know you've all heard me and I don't really want to repeat what I've said, but my biggest thing is, you know, as a city council, your city voted you guys in. We know you're going to tell what our wants and needs are. And by letting this go through and taking your vote away from those things and letting city management do it, you're taking our voices away. And that's not why we voted you into these positions. So I just ask that you please remember that we voted you in. You've already made your decision on this. Don't let it go, because then that takes our vote away as citizens, and you're actually working for us.
Thank you. Okay, those are all the forms I have in front of me right now. So we're going to move along to the consent agenda. You've all had a chance to read the consent agenda. Are there any questions or changes that need to be made? No? No? Can I have a motion on the floor?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, I have a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a first and second too. Did you get the right one there? I think Jonathan and Mike.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we're at department and committee reports. So some of the commissions, have you had any meetings with your groups that you wish to speak on? I'll start off with you, Jerry, since you're.
Yeah, both Downtown Estacada Commission and Arts Commission interviewed for their vacant seats. And I think both came away with very, very good recommendations. One we just approved, which was Heather Randall on the Downtown Estacada Commission. I think she's going to be an amazing asset to that commission, and she has an in at the schools. She was, and like I said, an amazing applicant. And then the applicant for the Arts Commission came in and she just blew our doors off. She's overqualified. She's got master's degrees and she's traveled around the world doing plays and musicals and traditional art, painting and drawing. So I think we got a couple of very, very good commissioners coming in.
Great, that's good to hear. Okay.
We didn't have any meetings.
No? Charity?
I have two.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I got notes on one and notes on another. Okay. So I'm gonna start off with school board. Meeting was January 10th, so it's been a while. But so I'll start off with student enrollment. CRE has a student enrollment of 441. River Mill is very crowded at 501, EMS at 433, and EHS 541. ESD welcomed 6 educational leaders from Oxford, Mississippi. So for those of you who may or may not know, that's where Ole Miss University is, and they came into Estacada to see the work that the school district is doing, because they've kind of been doing some amazing things lately. Let me just mention a couple. The Estacada School District attendance rate is sitting at 92%. Okay, so what that means is the regular attendance rate per the state of Oregon, they deem it as good at 80%. We're sitting at 92. The current state average for the state of Oregon is 62%. So our Estacada students are really showing up for school. So that's amazing. Attainment of passing classes is at 72% of students are passing 80% or more of their classes. The school district says that's great. That's definitely a huge improvement. They'd like to see it improve some more. They've also been doing some more polling. They did that already. That happened on the 28th and the 29th on the bond. And so for the next meeting, which will be on Valentine's Day, hopefully I'll be coming back with some more solidified information on the bond proposal. So that will happen. And that is the school report. The next report I have is the Parks and Rec meeting that met on the 24th of January. So we had from Sandy, a representative, Mr. John Wallace. He came in talking about the summer concert series, possibly working in tandem with our, with Rob Gaskill. So make sure that we're not double booking those events, because a lot of times they'll have a concert going in Sandy when we're having one in Estacada, and kind of looking to coordinate some different things that we can do with partner up with Sandy in some events during the summer. And then Parks and Rec discussed what priorities, and it's on our agenda tonight, that the city council wants for master plan amendment
And so that will be what we discuss this evening. And as well, there was a lot of discussion about the splash pad, Campanella. We had a lot of representatives from Campanella come in, definitely discussing their opposition to that, and that was taken to heart, definitely taken to heart. So I think that happens to be all that I have for Parks and Rec at the moment. Well, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
Nope, nothing. Library committee was not able to meet, and then planning commission will be discussing tonight.
Okay, great. Jonathan?
Yeah, I got a point I just missed. I wanted to highlight. I'm sat with the chair of my commission on traffic and public safety, and one thing that we discussed and that they would like to know is garnering a little bit of the council's support in establishing a process and timelines on actionable items. So if they identify, say, a hazard, like can we put a speed sign or a traffic sign or some kind of slow the vinyl on the street, excuse me, I can't think of the name of it right now, but one, what that process is, can we define what that looks like as far as when it goes to the city management and then to Dawn's desk, can we get a timeline? Can we establish prioritizing so that they're aware, so that they can at least answer to the community on like, it's going to happen in this kind of time frame or whatnot. So their ask was just that we as a council could maybe help clarify that and direct city management to be a little bit more, not transparent, maybe not the right word, but just start a better dialogue. Yeah.
To get the information out there for them.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so that they know, right? Like what happens after and what kind of time frame. So.
Great. All right, so that's all I have from all my counselors. So we will go to the city manager's report.
Okay, thank you. This evening, I wanted to give a brief update on progress made for the current year council goals for 2024, which are there on the website now, so people can view them. And I know these are we're just barely getting into 2024, but I wanted to run through a few things because we have hit the ground running. So your goal number 1 for infrastructure development, completion of wastewater treatment plant by 2026, which that'll be on the goal for a couple more years. But we wanted to let you know that we're publishing the RFP for the contractor on next Tuesday, which is the 20th. And that will be open for a month. And then we should, in just shortly over a month, be able to have a contractor on board to work with our engineer. And that's part of that CMGC process, the contract management general contractor alternate delivery method, and which will help us save some time, which saves money. So that's going out on the 20th. And we have already had 3 different contractors that have reached out to us to find out when that was going to be put out and get information on the project. They've talked to our engineer, Sean with Kennedy Jenks. And so that's looking good. And then also in that section, addressing essential infrastructure projects. The Main Street project, as most people know, is already underway. And so far it's going well. It's on schedule. Today we just walked around and delivered some open for business or open during construction signs to the businesses that are on Main. We have a couple more to catch tomorrow, but seems like it's going well so far. And I know we're going to get into the thick of it here pretty soon, but we're going to try really hard to keep people informed, and especially the folks that are directly impacted on Main Street. Your goal number 2 for community engagement and education. One of those goals was to hold town hall events for public engagement. And the first one of those was held on February 5th. And I thought that it went well. The school district allowed us to use their facility. They were gracious enough to just let us use it, and their staff. And I really appreciate the school district for partnering with us on that. And I thought that first town hall went well. We'll plan another one, probably towards May, and we'll have some more information on the next phase of the wastewater plant and other things that you might want to talk with the community about. Goal number 3 was economic growth, business opportunities. And one of those was to outsource economic development and work towards attracting businesses and industries in downtown and industrial areas. And we are currently developing an RFP for a contract with an economic development professional that will be able to work with us long-term. But in the meantime, another one of your points was to create a strategic economic development plan with an economic development committee. So we did a small short-term contract, started today with actually with John Lagarza, who hosted or who facilitated the goal setting. And he's going to be working with us to put together the Economic Development Commission, get the code ready for that to present to you to review and see, how we'll be utilizing the council's oversight on this all the way through. But he'll help us kind of work through the details to get an Economic Development Commission up and running. The goal is to have that going by the end of June or July 1st. And then we'll also work on getting somebody on board for longer term economic development work. And then lastly, you have a goal number 5, public safety and emergency preparedness, infrastructure improvements for safety. And we did receive a grant, which I think you already know about this, but we've received a grant for doing seismic improvements or a seismic improvement study. Then we'll have to do the improvements for the that will coincide with our water master plan update, and it'll give us what we need to do to our water plant for seismic stability. So I will try to bring updates of the goals that you have set all along the way. And that is the first one. I'm sure there's other things right now. I feel like there's something else I wanted to tell you, but that will conclude my report for now. So thank you. Any questions?
Okay. No, they're off the hook.
All right.
All right. We're now at the public hearing, so I will now close the city council and open the public hearing. The public hearing will be on a subdivision 2023-04-S Current Creek Estates 3. So I will hand that over to, Brian. Brian, you're up.
You might need to pull that microphone down a little bit. There we go.
All right, so today we're going to be reviewing the subdivision application for Current Creek Estates Phase 3. It's file number 2023-04-S. Your decision today will be final unless it's appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals, aka LUBA. All right, the applicant is Cedar Ridge Homes. They're located at 1905 Southwest 257th Street in Troutdale, Oregon. Their representative, Tracy Brown, who's also here today, is at 17075 Fur Drive, Sandy, Oregon, 97055. All right, so this is phase 3 of the Current Creek Estates subdivision. The applicant is proposing to subdivide the 5.89 acre lot into 27 single-family residential lots. In the proposal, they will be creating a street to give access to the bulk of the lots that will be designated as Street A throughout the rest of the presentation. The project is located just east of phase 2. The overhead map is a bit dated, but most Current Creek 2 is already built out. As you can see, the comprehensive plan map, this property is in the R1 zone, which is low density residential. This is also in your packet, but this is the preliminary plan for the site. As you can see, the 27 lots. All right, the first set of approval criteria to be evaluated for the R1 residential zone. This code section requires at least 7,500 square feet or larger lots. The sidewalks for Northeast Gilbert, Northeast Clayton, and Street A, excuse me, must meet the city standards for local streets, while Southeast Lawrence Road must meet the county standards, which are different from the cities. They require an additional 7 feet of dedicated right-of-way and a 5-foot landscape strip with street trees between the curb and the sidewalk. This code section requires either a mix of housing types or all single-family housing. With the proposed 27 lot single-family housing residential, this is met. The criteria in the R1 chapter are reviewed by staff when the building permits are submitted. We will evaluate the parking setbacks, building height, lot coverage, and facade requirements as part of the planning review and during the building permit phase. Chapter 16.108 is the tentative plans chapter. This chapter requires that subdivision applicants hold a pre-application meeting and it be held with any relevant agents to the project. The pre-app was held on January 4th of 2023 with the applicants, the fire district, city planning, city engineer, and public works. This chapter also has a list of items that are required to be on the tentative plan, and staff have found that the plans they submitted have all the required details. The next couple slides are for chapter 16.116. This is the design standards and improvements. This is the bulk of the report. First is the conformity to the comp plan. As shown before, the comp plan map designates this as low density residential. The applicant is proposing lots that conform to the comp plan. Next would be the performance agreement. All streets, utilities, and other necessary improvements need to be either completed, bonded for, or otherwise assured. Relation to the adjoining street system, the preliminary plans show that the streets on the property will connect to the city's transportation network. Street A will be required to stub at the northern border to allow access to the network if the property to the north ever decided to develop. Transportation adequacy and safety. Lots 94, 95, 96, 109, 110, and 111 only show roughly 50 feet of frontage from the closest intersection. This code section outlines that lots cannot have driveways that require backing into the right-of-way within 50 feet of an intersection. Code does allow the applicant to get permission in writing from the city engineer to allow this. And city engineer has stated he has no concerns with the spacing shown here, as these are low traffic streets with right angle intersections that will have good visibility. All land divisions shall comply with Estacada Municipal Code 16.74. This section requires that water and sewer be provided with the development. Half-street improvements are needed on Southeast Lawrence Road and those need to be to Clackamas County standards. All blackberry bushes and vegetation will need to be removed along Southeast Lawrence Road. All site distances at intersections will need to be calculated by a registered civil engineer licensed in the state of Oregon. Southeast Lawrence Road will require 7 feet of additional right-of-way that is required by the county. This will create a 27-foot wide half right-of-way. This includes a 5-foot landscape strip for street trees and a 5-foot wide sidewalk and a 16-foot half street. Other Clackamas County requirements are outlined in this chapter, which will be assessed by city staff and the city engineer at the time of platting. Shared driveways are allowed where feasible. Shared driveways are an option where deemed feasible. Additional criteria apply if the shared driveway is proposed. Shall be evaluated at the time of building permits. Here you can see the issue that I mentioned with the 50 feet of frontage near the intersections. Yeah, I just wanted to outline that so you knew what I was talking about. All right, next. All right, the public street standards. Northeast Gilbert Street, I think it's Gilbert, no, it's Lane, is 32 feet across. Our updated TSP would have required a 36-foot width, but it was not adopted yet at the time of this application. So the developer is entitled to match the 32 feet street standards from phase 2 and allow the street to remain consistent. Street A is also going to be 32 feet with a 5-foot landscape strip and 5-foot sidewalks. These requirements will need to be incorporated into the final design because it's not shown here. The code optionally allows the city to require a landscape strip. Southeast Lawrence, we talked about that's the 16-foot half street. Street A will need to be extended to the northern border boundary line. This will allow future development to extend the street up. City and fire approval is needed for the final street design and the stub of Street A. This is just to make sure that the fire department is able to use the stub as a turnaround and that it meets the standards required by the city. Thanks. Oh, Service requirements, the utility easements, a 10-foot public utility easement is required in the frontage along all public streets. All lots are required to have access to water and sewer services. The extension of the water sewer lines from either phase 2 or coming up Southeast Lawrence Road are conditions of approval and will be evaluated by the city engineer and the applicant. Drainage, the applicant submitted a storm memo, which is dated October 19th, 2023 from All County Surveying stating the stormwater basins for the proposal have not changed from the Kern Creek Phase 2 report. The city engineer will assess the stormwater prior to platting. And then for underground utilities, all utilities are required to be undergrounded, including water, sewer, electric, cable, fiber. A continuous walkway system is required by the code. 5-foot sidewalks required on all public streets and within the 10-foot easement along the frontage of the property. It needs to be safe, direct, and convenient, which means all residents are required to be connected via sidewalk. The vehicle walkway separation are required, and each street has different requirements due to the classification of the street. I'm trying to keep consistent with previous developments. Northeast Gilbert will require a 6-inch tall curb tight sidewalk to match phase 2. Northeast Clayton will require a 5-foot landscape strip and a 5-foot sidewalk. The new street designated street A will require a 5-foot landscape strip with 5-foot sidewalks. Southeast Lawrence will be held to Clackamas County standards as described in the staff report. Walkway width and surface will be evaluated at the time of building and will be inspected by the city engineer and public works to make sure they are built to our standards. So these are the recommendations.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We met on a day that I think you were out or weren't able to meet, and I should have thought to go in and update your notes here. But we, because the new TSP was not yet adopted, we determined we could not require the 36-foot width or the planter strip for all of those internal streets. So what we agreed upon was they are entitled to build the 32-foot curb to curb cross section for all of the streets except for Southeast Lawrence Road. This is what's in condition number 8 of the updated conditions of approval, with curb tight 5-foot sidewalks and on-street parking consistent with the existing Northeast Gilbert Street.
Okay.
Sorry for the confusion.
Sorry about that. That was when the snowstorm hit. So it was that meeting.
Oh, yeah, that's what it
Yeah,
was.
yeah, my power was out. All right, so here we're gonna have 2 different recommendations. So the planning commission understood that the proposal to subdivide tax lot 4,500 can meet all the applicable approval criteria. However, the planning commission is concerned about the dangers posed by allowing driveways to access Southeast Lawrence Road, and they recommended denial. And they also, on top of that, are recommended that the city council negotiate to prevent driveways from accessing directly onto Southeast Lawrence Road. Now, for the city staff, we see that the proposal to subdivide tax lot 4,500 can meet all applicable approval criteria, and therefore we recommend approval of 2023-04-S with the conditions outlined in the staff report, which there's substantial conditions. And then also to have the city council negotiate an alternative plan that could be a separate land use application. Now, this is the planning commission's concern. The reason for the planning commission's denial is highlighted in red. It's those 8 lots. That road is a 55-mile-per-hour road, and it's a hazard for existing and future residents in the area. A newly adopted TSP upgrades Southeast Lawrence Road to a major collector from a local street. The difference between the two is a local street requires driveways to be up to 15 feet apart, while a major collector requires driveways to be up to 75 feet apart. Planning Commission is also concerned about the increased traffic coming around that dangerous curve on Southeast Lawrence Road, coming up to the proposed subdivision. Next slide. All right. These are the legal considerations. This slide gives the reasoning for staff's recommendation of approval. Though we may agree with the planning commission on their concerns, our job is to make sure that we are following the laws set by the state and requirements set in our city code. So the applicant is asking that we approve this application as is, but is open to the possibility of negotiating this site's development in a separate land use decision. We are required to evaluate, we, the city, are required to evaluate their proposal against the development code and can only base our decision on whether it meets that code. Since the application does meet the code, the city is required by state law to approve it. If the council does want to negotiate some kind of alternative layout to prevent driveways from taking access on Lawrence Road, it sounds like the applicant is willing to engage on that, but it would need to happen through a separate land use application. All right, so the conditions of approval, there's a substantial list, but I kind of summed them up here. There's general conditions. These conditions of approval are general city requirements that are evaluated by the planning department prior to platting. These include general layout of the final plat, coordination with Public Works, Engineering, County, and Fire to make sure all conditions of approval are completed, and then the mailboxes, plat name, approval, etc. The next set is the the transportation conditions. This list of conditions goes over the conditions outlined by the city engineer for the street and right-of-way requirements. These include completion or bonding for all street and sidewalk improvements, the requirements for all street improvements, PUE and right-of-way dedication, and drainage plans. The next set is the city utility public works conditions. These conditions are required by Public Works regarding underground water and sewer utilities. These include public utility, DEQ demolition, and WAS requirements and standards. The fire district conditions, these conditions are required and laid out by the Estacada Fire District. These include all fire hydrant access, turnaround, water pressure, and fire lane requirements. All right, so after we released the packet last week, I found a couple errors, or we found a couple errors that needed to be fixed. The new packet was posted at 4 p.m. to the website with the correction to 12 and 13. I had just put the should be provided in accordance with EMC. Or unless otherwise approved in writing by the city council, I put it on the wrong one. Next. Okay. The other modification was 16 and 18 were basically saying the same thing, so we combined them together under 16 and deleted condition 18. All right, we had a meeting with the applicant. That's the one that I missed because of the storm, but these are the two options that we came up with. Option A is to approve as is. The driveways would remain on Southeast Lawrence Road. It's the legally defensible route and it's the least risk to the city. Option 2 is to negotiate trade-offs, which would remove the Southeast Lawrence driveways, but the city would maybe waive or flex some development standards like smaller lots. Separate land use application. A separate land use application will be required, and there's legal risk for both parties without proper land use noticing. And city council, these are your decision options. You can approve with the conditions as presented by staff, approve, change, add, or remove conditions, or deny the findings, deny with the findings that there's something missing. Okay. Peter?
So there is one other option, and that option would be, and it would require cooperation from the applicant. But if the applicant was willing to agree to a condition, and then they were to waive what's called the Nolan case, which is the Supreme Court case, and the Dolan case, and there's a nexus between the condition and the development, and also the conditions roughly proportionate to the benefit received. So if all three of those things were to happen, then we could do that condition as part of this application, and that wouldn't require them to come back in and do a separate land use. So the benefit to them would be, and they may see this as a benefit or maybe not. that they would be under the standards that existed at the time of the application. So what's called the fixed goalpost rule, so that they wouldn't have to do these landscape strips. It would be the sidewalks that were in play at that time. And then as long as the condition is in response to public comment and there isn't public comment to the contrary, I'm less concerned about the public noticing. And that's because of a case I was recently involved in at Luba called Haugen versus the city of Scappoose, where the condition was in response to the public concerns. There were no public concerns arguing contrary. So my theory in that case, and what was ultimately adopted by Luba, was that if the condition is in response to community concerns, then those community members might not love the project, but would find the project more palatable than what was originally proposed. So that's just to, I don't want to complicate matters further, but that is one other option that we could pursue depending on what the opposition wanted, and also depending on the flexibility of the applicant. And I don't know what that could look like. I mean, it could be an alleyway and waiving maybe some, I don't know. They as staff said, they meet all the criteria. I'm not the best driver in the world, but backing onto a 55-mile-an-hour road, I can understand why that would be of concern to a lot of people. So perhaps there's some sort of compromise that will be palatable to the developer and palatable to the city, or not. But it might, that's the other option, and it wouldn't require a separate, that we, with cooperation, wouldn't require that whole separate process.
Okay. Any more comments?
I don't have any.
Okay, Brian, do you have anything else to add? No, okay. Council, any questions?
Are we in the public?
Yeah, I'm not there yet.
Okay.
But staff doesn't have anything more to add, so I will now read a statement. A statement about evidence presented at the hearing, an issue which may be the basis for an appeal to Luba, must be raised prior to the close of the record at the final eventuary hearing on the specific application. Such issue shall be raised with sufficient specificity so as to afford Luba and the parties an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue. Failure of an issue to be raised at the hearing or in person or by letter, failure to provide sufficient specificity to afford Luba and the parties an adequate opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal to Luba on that issue. Okay, and would the applicant like to come up and speak on this?
Good evening. My name is Tracy Brown, and I guess I want to just clarify the time we have for our presentation. We don't probably need a little more than 3 minutes, but 5 to 10 minutes.
You're
probably be
fine.
sufficient.
You're fine.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, this is Mike Ard. He's the transportation engineer, and I'm a land use planning consultant. We also have Ray Moore, who is a civil engineer, and Tyler Henderson is on Zoom, who was actually the engineer of record on the project. So again, thank you very much. As I get started, I mean, I think Brian did a good job kind of describing the project, and it's just an extension of an existing phase 2 project, and the street within that project would be extended to this one and go all the way to Lawrence Road. There are a couple important dates we need to keep in mind. So the application was submitted on October 30th, and the city deemed it complete on November 20th. And then you're all aware that you reviewed your transportation system plan, and that was adopted on January 8th and became effective just last week on February 7th. So it's important that those, was submitted, as one of the counselors mentioned, the goalpost rule of state of Oregon requires applications to be reviewed under the standards in place at the time it was submitted. At the Planning Commission meeting There was a bit of testimony and considerable discussion about Lawrence Road. And there was two primary issues that were discussed: the current design and alignment of Lawrence Road. And if you all know the road, and I just drove it tonight again, there's quite a curve in that road. And then the other thing had to do with the lots that are proposed to take direct access onto this road. We do want to emphasize that the road is it is a county, under county jurisdiction, and under county transportation plan, it's identified as a local road. And I'll have Mike Ard in a little bit talk about that speed limit component of the road. And in your transportation system plan, you did classify it as a major collector for a future development of that road. So adjust the curve, the transportation system plan detailed a project in the plan, and that's A27. And it's essentially to straighten that curve out and build a bridge over Kern Creek at the price of about $23 million. So that project it's not identified as a high priority project or on the financially constrained list. So it's likely not to happen very soon, I would imagine. And there's no specific timeline for that project. Regarding the direct access onto this road, I did a review of the current development code. And so the question is, if it were under the current code regarding the classification of Lawrence Road as a major collector, would access be limited? And so there's three sections that I found. So again, this is identified as a collector street, not an arterial, and two of the sections have to do with arterial streets. So the only section that I saw that relevant for a collector street was one that talks about a lot with access on two streets, one being the collector, one being a local street. There's a preference for taking access off of that lower classification street, which would be the local street. And so there are two lots in this development that, if Lawrence Road were identified or classified as a collector, would be required to take access off of that side, that local street. But again, it wasn't identified as a collector when this was submitted. So it's essentially designed under the local street standard. And the other two sections talk about access on arterial streets, and neither of these sections prohibit access per se, but rather specifies that access shall be limited where possible, and if proposed, shared driveways shall be provided. So the discussion about, yeah, we just can't have access on that street, with the current code, if this road were identified as a collector, would not prohibit the development as proposed. So I just want to clarify that. We did appreciate staff's review of those conditions, and we agree with all of the conditions that staff has proposed as modified. And we did provide I don't know if my second memo made it into the record or not. I provided a second memo last week talking about a couple of the conditions, and Brian went through some of those. And actually, as he went through them, I wasn't 100% clear if he was referring to the conditions that we asked about or not. Our main concern had to do with the transportation conditions, and there's a very long list of transportation conditions going from condition 8 up to 27. And in that list of conditions, some of them are really only relevant to Lawrence Road, and some of them are relevant to the local streets, which are under city jurisdiction, but there's really no distinguishing between those. Some of the conditions say, it should apply to any street. So is it Lawrence Road or is it the local streets? And some of them specifically talk about Lawrence road, which is clear that that only applies to Lawrence Road. So we asked that two headings be placed to just clarify that conditions 8 through, I think it was 16, would apply to local streets, and 17 through 27 would apply to Lawrence Road. And I think that's kind of been done in the staff recommendation, but it wasn't clear when Brian was going through those last changes if that had happened or not. So I think at this time, I'll just ask Mike Ard to kind of talk about Lawrence Road and some of the traffic issues related to this project. And then I might do a quick wrap up after that.
Thank you. Good evening. Mike Ard with Ard Engineering, for the record. I'm the transportation engineer that prepared the traffic impact study that was submitted into the record for this project. It was reviewed by the city as well as Clackamas County. I don't want to dwell too much on the traffic impact study itself, because most of the results of the analysis are just showing intersections operating at level of service A or B, which is very high levels of service, and at about 8% of capacity. There just isn't any significant problem there. There's also not a significant crash history in the site vicinity. There has been some controversy in this project, though, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the elements that have been controversial. And in particular, I want to talk about the speeds and the classification on Lawrence Road, because that has been a major focus. First of all, what I would like to point out is that the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit on Lawrence Road is a bit of a fiction. It's created by Oregon law, which says that if there is not a designated speed limit for a roadway, and it doesn't fall into a defined category that would have a separate speed limit, then the speed limit is 55 miles per hour. And that is called Oregon's basic rule speed. So the basic rule just means that you're required to travel at a speed that is reasonable and prudent to driving conditions and not in excess of 55 miles an hour. So while we can't look at that road right now and say the speed limit is 35 miles an hour, if somebody was going 50 miles an hour down that road and that was determined to be in excess of what's reasonable by a police officer, they could still get a ticket if they were going less than 55 miles per hour. But more importantly, this project changes that equation significantly. And the reason is specifically because we have driveways that back onto Lawrence Road. Under Oregon law, there is a designation for streets that are residential in nature and have an average driveway spacing of 190 feet or less. When we put those houses onto Lawrence Road, it will meet that designation. It will become a residential district. And by virtue of that, the speed limit becomes 25 miles per hour. And you can post that. There is another way to change the speed limit, and that's through a speed zone order, which would have to be done by Clackamas County. So basically the city would go to Clackamas County and say, we think a reasonable speed on this roadway would be, say, 35 miles an hour. And they would do a study and come up with results, either agree or disagree with you, and then put up a posted speed limit. In any case, I don't believe that they would determine the appropriate speed for that roadway is 55 miles an hour. And for any of you who've driven on it, you can probably tell that that's not a reasonable speed for it. But it's interesting to me that the problem that's being brought to you, the primary problem that we have this high-speed roadway in conflict with people backing out of driveways, is actually solved by allowing people to back out of their driveways. If we have that driveway spacing on the road, you can post 25 miles per hour, even without the permission of Clackamas County. It just is a residence district at that point. It does create a bit of another problem, which is that the future classification of the roadway is as a major collector. So the intent is that the roadway should primarily serve to move through traffic, and maybe sometimes at the expense of turning movements on and off of the roadway. A local street, the lowest classification, which it is prior to adoption of the TSP, is really supposed to be focused on getting people to their homes. So having driveways on local streets is always appropriate. Sometimes it's not so appropriate to do it for a higher classification street, an arterial or a collector. In this case, and I echoed this at the prior hearing, The fact is that Lawrence Road is a dead-end road under existing conditions. It doesn't carry a whole lot of traffic. And it can't carry a whole lot of traffic until that connection is made through to the north past the airport property. The city's plan does eventually include the idea that it'll make that connection. But even when it does, it will not serve large-scale development on the east side of Lawrence Road because it's outside of your urban growth boundary. There are some roads within the city that do serve dense development on both sides of them. And those roadways are going to carry high volumes of traffic in the future. Lawrence Road is not going to do that within the foreseeable future. Your city would have to grow beyond probably 50 years, not the 20-year planning horizon to get to that point. So when I look at the idea that we might slow some through traffic down because somebody's backing out of a driveway onto Lawrence, as a traffic engineer, I'm not particularly concerned about that problem. I kind of like the idea that we would slow them down to 25 miles an hour in a residence district. I want to acknowledge one other thing associated with this, that when I did the traffic study, I actually found 3 problems as far as safety on Lawrence Road. Those 3 problems were, number 1, vegetation along our site frontage goes right up to the edge of the roadway. And if we tried to put in driveways under those conditions, you could not see far enough down the roadway for it to be safe. But fortunately, when you do the development, you're required to make improvements, including the new curb, the sidewalk, and some improvements beyond that to get to the front of the house that will enable getting the appropriate sight lines to the north and south so that those driveways can see far enough. The vegetation within the site frontage is entirely under our control as developers, and we will build it so that it will be safe. The second problem that I saw is some off-site vegetation to the south of the site. That's not under our direct control. But when you look south from the southernmost roadway that intersects Lawrence Road, you can see not quite to the curve where it starts to drop down into the dip. And I didn't like that. I want to be able to see as far as possible. That vegetation is restricting right now. And because it is, I reported that in my study and I said, we need to clean this vegetation up. And we have a condition of approval in the report that responds to that and says that that vegetation to the south of the site on the west side of Lawrence Road needs to be removed so that you can see to that corner. That's an appropriate condition of approval. The third one, I'm not sure it's actually in the staff report or that we have a condition of approval for it, but you might want to consider it. And that's that right now, the public open intersection that previously was envisioned as being gated, but I understand the city council, if that legend is correct, is the one that decided that gate should be removed. When it got removed, there wasn't a stop sign placed on the eastbound approach to Lawrence Road. Without it operating under stop control, you'd have to be able to see quite a ways down the road to know, even without stopping, that it's safe to turn onto Lawrence Road. And that's a bit of a problem right now. So really a stop sign should be installed at that intersection. And that's something that you might consider making a condition of approval. It would also apply to the new roadway on the north side of the development. There really ought to be a stop sign there, assuming that it is open and that neither of them are gated. With those improvements, the roadway can operate safely, and I feel very comfortable saying that. I do not have concerns about the safety of this project in terms of vehicles backing out onto Lawrence Road. The site distances to the south are a minimum of 520 feet. The site distance to the north is a minimum of 590 feet. And that's enough site distance that vehicles that are driving at speeds over 55 miles an hour can still come to a complete stop before they reach the intersection. What it doesn't meet is a what's called intersection sight distance standards that assumes that a driver pulling up on the side street wants to be able to see far enough down the roadway that through traffic doesn't even have to slow down to avoid a conflict. And if we did that for 55 miles an hour, we might find, hey, some of those people driving 55 miles an hour have to slow down. Again, that's a bit of a fiction because at the limits of sight distance, there are sharp curves. You can't go 55 miles an hour around those curves. And if you're approaching at 25 miles an hour, you don't have a problem again. So I hope that that's not overly complicated. I really like talking about transportation stuff. You can probably tell because I get into some of these details. I do want to cover one other thing that's not kind of directly related to that safety and transportation, which is why are we coming forward with this plan tonight? We did talk with the Planning Commission about the idea of an alternative plan that wouldn't have the driveways taking direct access. And the applicant is amenable to an alternative plan. The problem is that there isn't an alternative plan that we could put together that would meet the code criteria. The plan that we have tonight does meet the code criteria. So we feel very strongly that we can defend the current application and that you're required to approve it. In order to get to something that's approvable on an alternative, we would need some design exceptions. We would need to decrease the minimum lot sizes. We'd be asking for essentially not things that are allowed outright by code, but are things that you could grant us by being magnanimous to us. But that puts us in a very weak position, because if we went forward with only the alternative plan, you could say no. Or for that matter, someone behind us could object to the ideas, to the compromise that we put together. When we were in front of the Planning Commission, we could talk about deals that could be made, but they couldn't even assure us that those deals would be made, because it's the planning or the city council that would have to make those decisions ultimately. So we found ourselves in a really weird position where we're talking about a deal with people that are not enabled to make the deal with us. And even if they could, we couldn't guarantee that it would survive an appeal through LUBA. So what we have tonight is a plan that we believe you are required to approve, that meets all of the relevant standards, that does not have significant safety concerns associated with it. And given approval tonight, that would put us in a secure position where we can negotiate an alternative, knowing that if the negotiations break down, there's something we can still do with the site. And if we didn't move forward with this, we wouldn't have that opportunity. So we are asking for approval of this plan. We are certainly open to discussing alternatives with you as we move forward in the future as well. And I hope that sheds a little bit of light on the weirdness that's in front of you tonight regarding why we're moving forward with this plan and why we're still talking about another one.
Okay.
Actually, that's a good point, Mike. That's what I was going to kind of wrap up with, and the negotiation part of that was mentioned by the staff. And you know, we did have a meeting with the staff, and I think the city manager was there as well. And it became very clear that in order to make a plan work without access on Lawrence Road, it would require modifications to the code. And I didn't really see how we could get there. You know, I've been a planner for 30 years, and you can't just make it up, so to speak. There has to be an avenue provided in the code to make it work, you know, variances, this, that, and the other thing. And so the risk to the developer, I think, is greater than the benefit to him, at least. So that's probably where his perspective is. So I guess with that, if you have any questions of us, we'd like to try to answer those.
Any questions for them? No, too.
I have a question. Maybe a question more for Paul. So, were you at the meeting? So was all this discussed during that meeting? It's just kind of too in the weeds that we didn't get the notes on that.
Yeah, more or less. This is what we discussed, or what the planning commission discussed. I think we've got a planning commission member here as well too. I don't know if we have any online that would like to chime in as well too, but from a planning commission standpoint, and I don't want to put words in their mouths, but they agreed that this plan A essentially met all the requirements. There were no, I believe as Ryan put, is there anything that says we can say no from a compliance standpoint? And there wasn't. The concern was mainly Lawrence Road.
I have a statement, not really a question. So, by approving this design tonight, it's not just the 8 driveways going onto Lawrence Road. If you look at page 141 in our packet, phase 5 and phase 6 puts an additional 11 driveways going onto Lawrence Road with this design. So I honestly believe that 19 driveways going onto Lawrence Road is not creating a safe, passable road. I think that's dangerous, especially driveways close to that blind curve. I think that a redesign of this development would be in order.
Right?
Would the developer be receptive to a condition being added that assured the developer that it was going to be mutually beneficial, the trade-off between not having the driveways onto Lawrence and some benefit that came from reduced lot sizes or other conditions that the city put in place that would be beneficial?
Can I just respond really quickly to something that I heard about it being more than 8 driveways? If we come in with a future application, it will be after the adoption of the new TSP, and you actually by code can prevent those new driveways.
But by you guys developing the middle section first, by developing the middle section of those 3 sections, of those 3 phases, by developing that middle section, you guys are setting the tone for the rest of those other 2. You're setting the roads, you're setting the tone for those other 2 phases.
I think that that's true. Absolutely.
And I mean, that's my problem. That's 19 driveways going onto Lawrence Road.
They won't be able to put that many because with the updated TSP, it becomes a major collector. And I didn't catch this during our January 22nd meeting, but the major collector, you can have driveways access onto it, but they have to be spaced at least 75 feet apart, as opposed to the local road can have them as close as 15 feet apart. So they wouldn't be able to fit that many driveways because of that much larger spacing, but they would still be able to put a few driveways probably.
Yeah, there's
in
also a little
different
bit of a
developments.
constraint associated with topography. As you go south of the site, it starts to drop into that valley area. And so having lots front along there, it would actually be very difficult just in terms of construction, but also in terms of getting enough site distance around the corner. So there are some limitations that'll reduce that.
Yeah, I guess, we would make every effort to going forward, to minimize any access on Lawrence. This one was submitted without really considering the transportation system plan, because it was still an idea, we'll say. And so we just built it on the code that's in place when we submitted it. So it'd be pretty tough to go back and say, hey, now you got to comply with some new code. So that's, we're not opposed to doing that, but we really think it's in the developer's best interest to get this under our belt and then talk about, a better way to make it work for everybody. Because there's, to redesign something, there's cost to, us involved in it and all that kind of stuff, as well as all these flexes in the code that would be required. So it's kind of a bigger can of worms to go back. But it's not saying it can't be done, but we'd prefer not to do that.
We've just had a lot of public comment come in recently prior to this subdivision coming back before us about speeding specifically on Lawrence Road. And yes, I guess if the speed limit unposted is 55 miles an hour and people feel that they're exceeding that and they're upset enough about it to come in and complain about it, that's my concern. It's going to take about 300 feet, right, for a car going 55 miles an hour. It's about 295, 300 feet to come to a stop if they're speeding through there. I think that's the concern. I understand that you guys meet all the conditions of approval, and I don't like the idea of moving goalposts on someone that purchased the property with the intent of doing something, putting all that work into the design. I just wanted to know if you guys would be receptive to it. And then I had a question for Taylor. Is that true that the city can place a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit in a residential zone that is a county road when it becomes a residential zone or residential district?
That last piece, the fact that it's a county road, I'm not sure if it would need to, if we'd need to do an IGA or take over jurisdiction of the road in order to place it, or just go through a permitting process with Clackamas County, or just contact them and,
Yeah,
or just do it
I
and
should
ask
be a little
for
bit clear on
forgiveness.
that, the 55 mile an hour statutory speed limit applies whenever there is not a speed zone order and when one of the other districts, which are the residence district or the commercial district, would apply. And in this case, if it's unposted, but does meet the definition of a residence district, then statutorily it is a 25 mile per hour speed limit. So that's the default if it's unposted. If you are putting up signs, I think that's a reasonable point that you might need to get Clackamas County's permission to put a sign on their road.
Yeah, my thinking on that's just that if the driveways are going out there is gonna allow it to be posted as a 25 mile per hour zone that can be enforced. I don't like the idea of it being 25 miles per hour because the people that are speeding down there currently aren't gonna know that hypothetically the speed limit changed. If we could post a sign there, I think it would kill two birds with one stone as far as slowing the traffic down, having a posted enforceable speed limit sign there.
I would agree with
like
that.
the idea of that. but-
I'd also add that the perception of speeding as reported by the public is typically not done with a radar gun. So usually what it means is that they see people that are driving at speeds that they think are too fast. And that doesn't necessarily mean that those cars are driving over 55 miles an hour. In fact, I'd be shocked if there are any significant number of vehicles that are driving over 55 miles an hour on that road under existing conditions. But they are going to be driving at speeds that feel inappropriate to observation, whatever those are. And you'd get complaints from that.
Did the TIS do any speed studies?
It's something that we can do. It's not something that we were asked to do. So
Okay.
I don't have any speed data for there.
Got it.
I just have a quick comment to that. And I speak from experience myself. People drive really fast around here. I don't know if you guys, I don't know if you live out here or not, but they drive very fast. And I've been doing 55. Sometimes I'm doing 65 and 55 zones, spring water, etc. I have someone up my butt. So I know I let them pass me. They zoom past going 75 or 80. So
Yeah.
I mean, in theory, yes, 55, but we all know the locals out here know that people drive insane speeds.
Yeah.
So this is our concern because like Councilor McElroy said, people do come to these meetings and it's, they're very vocal about what's going on. And hence
Understood.
why we have a traffic and public safety committee, because this is,
Do we
This
have a
is- this
map
is
that
a-
we could put
yeah,
on the
this is-
screen?
this is totally a problem we're having. So
Because the thing is, on this road, you have essentially 90-degree curves at both ends to the north and to the south of it. And those are the things that really restrict speeds as you're entering this segment of road. The middle of it is where the homes would be. So you're a little ways away from that. But it's also the reason that when I say there's nobody that can approach at 55 miles an hour, it's because
Sadie.
you'd be flying off of those curves at 55.
Sadie, page 141 in our packet.
It's basically 600 feet from the start of the property to the north curve.
Yeah.
520 feet from the south of the property to the south curve.
That sounds
Coming
about
down
right.
there, so
Yeah.
they have to come through there. My concern.
It almost
just-
sounds like you
yeah.
measured it. It's so accurate.
No, just Google mapping it.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
you check it. I was looking for it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty much dead on what I saw.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna give Jonathan the chance and then Melanie.
Yeah, I would just like to second what you're saying, Charity. I think that respectfully, it's not your animals that are being struck by speeding vehicles or your children that are being put in danger. You're coming from a perspective of somebody proposing to build something and somebody coming with data. And I do respect that you've done your homework and that your presentation is very clean. So I thank you for coming with your full birds, but please understand that when you're being dismissive of this, you're dismissing the community's concerns.
I don't mean to be dismissive. In fact, that's why I said I found three
Please let me
problems
finish.
out there.
Please let me finish.
Okay.
Thank you. What I'm saying is their concerns are for their property, their animals, their
Yes.
children and things like that. Now, that being said, I understand that currently that's not the case, but what we're talking about is building and adding houses. And like Jerry said, going further on in further stages, that's going to bring more traffic and that's going to get increased.
Right.
Now, I do appreciate like what Councilman McElroy said, that posting a speed limit in there, that actually may kill two birds with two stones. But in discussion, one of the things that was brought up at the town hall is why are we wavering? Why are we changing all this? Why do we keep changing that? So I'm kind of torn on this conversation because I would, one, I'd like to hear, if we got him here, I would like to hear from somebody from planning commission to know, or even Paul, if you could answer this specifically, more of where you said that it meets conditions, but what is it exactly that their hang up for denial is? Like, let's just get to that. Like, what is the real issue here? And then two, are we really going to sit here when the community just said this, that they're sick of us bending code or changing rule to accommodate developers or whatnot? Where are we going to draw the line as a council for this? And I think that the time is to have that discussion is now.
Very well said, Jonathan. Melanie?
I just had a quick thought to interject because perhaps there's people in the public who want to talk about living on Lawrence Road. But as I'm looking at page 141, which I'm sorry, we don't have it up there. It's the three larger lots right along Lawrence Road there from the top of the curve, all the way up to the corner. In the future, when those do all fill up with homes because they're inside the urban growth boundary, is it bad? And bad and good in this situation is relative based on perspective. But for people who live on that road, would it be bad to put a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit if they're concerned about people going too fast? And we do have informal data that we've gathered from our little speed radar signs about the speeds on that road. But is it going to be is maybe this a benefit to make it a 25-mile-an-hour road from the top of that curve? Because the curve is probably 15 miles an hour. I don't know. You could probably make it fast. I'm sure you could drive it fast. But when we're talking about your average driver going from the top of that curve all the way up and then around that 90-degree, what's the problem with it being 25 miles an hour?
So the development that Paul lives in, it's 25 mile per hour through there. People still drive it at 40, 45. Mm-hmm. We've had those neighbors in here, stating that. So posting a 25 mile per hour isn't going to guarantee anything. Right. People are still going to drive that road, the speed that they drive that road. I just, posting it and being able to enforce it are two different things. Hmm. And right now, I don't think we can enforce it.
Mr. Mayor. I'm going to say something before, and I'll give you a chance to speak. My question is to your team. Do any of your team live here? Any of?
I live in Sandy. I was the planning director in Sandy for 15 years.
All right. And your traffic knowledge comes from where? Where do you reside?
Yeah, my practice in transportation engineering has been exclusively in the Portland metro area. I reside in the city of Sherwood, which is on the west side, but I do a lot of work here in Oregon City, in the city of Sandy, and a lot of smaller communities as well.
I saw that. You're very experienced in what you say, but you're in an area that's totally different. Estacada is not Portland. It never will be Portland. We don't drive the way you think everybody. I don't know if you ever caught the show on TV, Dukes of Hazzard. Imagine that in our back roads, because that's what you're going to see a lot of. Okay. So I understand their concern. Before this meeting today, I drove up this morning when there was a slight drizzle in the air. It was, kind of still raining. And I parked in the little a Forest Service road that they put in there for chopping the trees down right before the curve you're talking about. And I was, just taking pictures, kind of getting an idea what we're talking about here tonight. I was getting ready to back up and I started to back out and a truck came flying around that corner going, I didn't even know how fast because I didn't have a speed gun on, but he was moving. And I just about took out my back end. And that's what they're looking at here. That's the fact. And so their concerns are valid. And I put a lot of merit behind that. And I think everybody at this table does. And we get that you're asking, to get this in place. You don't want to have to face all the things. And we're going to try to be understanding in that. But at the same time, our concern for the citizens and their well-being in this is very important to us. So we hope you understand that going forward. Yeah, Jonathan, you had another question.
Yeah, I do appreciate, I want to be clear, I do appreciate what you're saying. I just think that is there, and this is a question for Peter to answer on record, but is there an option to, let's just say, table this to get more information? Can we can we buy some time here to get with Clackamas County to find out if that would be an option to post it? Jerry, I get what you're saying that a sign doesn't, but it's a hard, give us actual facts, not hypotheticals. I want like, this is what we could do. And do we have time to do that? Do we have time to bring the planning commission in and ask them would this meet what your recommendation would be as well?
To a joint session.
A joint session, yeah. What are our legal?
Taylor, can you answer that?
I can answer that. So with the permission of the applicant, we can pause the 120-day rule, which would give us all an opportunity to have some of the conversations that apparently they were having with the planning commission. We haven't heard from the public yet, so we haven't heard what their concerns are, and that would inform those conversations. As the applicant points out, if we were to have some sort of internal street to take the traffic off of Lawrence Road, which sounds like there's a lot of community concerns about that aspect, that would require some variances or what have you from the city. And so the public would need to understand that we're hearing their concerns. And so we're doing something that we conditionally do in response to that. And then, ultimately it would require cooperation from the applicant, because as they point out, they, under the fixed goalpost rule, put in, got this application in to the point, if the number of driveways brings it to that unposted residential district, it's still not posted. So, oftentimes when I'm on a road around Estacada, I'm not sure exactly how fast I'm supposed to be going, but the other drivers are telling me I should be going faster because, to your point, I'm usually leading the pack. So, and again, the 120-day rule is for the applicant's benefit, so that we would need them to waive it so that we can have that conversation. We would want to, and again, we need to hear from the public, know what all their concerns are. We could continue it to a time certain, so we wouldn't have to do all the formal noticing that we'd want to put up all those things on our website so the public's informed and they understand what's going on. But there's some tools we could use to hopefully get to something that will be palatable to them, and palatable to the community. And then the other thing I'd mention, because it does seem like we're asking them to give some things up, perhaps, that a driveway to a road that is getting 55-mile-an-hour traffic is probably a less attractive lot than one that is not requiring you to go to a public street or an alleyway or whatever it is. So there could be, I get why they had to align this in the way that they did, because our code essentially prescribed that for them, but it would not be like we would be the only beneficiaries of something. For a deal to work, it needs to work for all parties, and that would be the community, and that will be the applicant, and hopefully that will be, you as the council ultimately. And that's what we could try for. So we could, I think what I heard them propose was originally a decision, and then they would come back with a separate application, separate design, and that decision approving would essentially be the leverage that they have, because the community would understand, if you don't like what they're proposing, then this is what you get. The alternative would be, I don't think we're at a point tonight where we could do a condition. The other alternative would be they pause the 120-day rule. Maybe it can't be more than, it's not indefinitely, but it would buy us a few months. Yeah.
The land use application being, were you pointing out?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The land use application being approved and then a new application being put in would not disqualify the initial approval. So say that they came with an alternative application, that first one would be in place. If the second one failed because the modifications that the city was giving up, the public didn't like, that first one would still be in place, or does it? go
Yeah,
with-
no, they would, this one would be approved and then the alternative, this would be their fallback plan. And if there wouldn't be if there isn't a negotiated compromise as part of the follow-up, then this is what they would get to build.
And just want to clarify one other thing. As far as bending to the developers, the comment on that, the developers have met every condition of the current code. Bending to the developers is going to be the negotiation we have to get the driveways off of Lawrence, because they currently meet all of the code requirements. So that's approving what the current code is. When they made the application, we're not bending to anything. They've met all the criteria. We're going to be bending to it when we negotiate with them to get the driveways not to come out onto Lawrence, because we're in a position where we're asking for it.
Correct. So like under the clear and objective criteria, whether this is ideal for them or not, and I don't know if it is or it isn't, this is what they get to do.
Yeah.
As far as the compromise where we're doing a conditional use, or we're doing an adjustment, however you want to call it, whether that's like what we do with more of a planned unit development, where we might do some, lot line or lot size or whatever adjustments in exchange for something else. That would be that we're bending. I mean, people can disagree with the prior criteria, but this was the prior criteria. And this is the last one that'll be under that, because our new transportation stuff will all be in place for the next one.
We received one more application right before the new TSP went into effect.
For
But
point
yes.
of clarification, I understand that and I agree with you, but that's what I'm saying when we're talking about bringing it back in and asking them to change this and make this, or us shrinking lot sizes and stuff like that, that would be the bend that I was referring to for clarification. I do understand that, but that's where I would like to hear from somebody from the planning commission. I would like more clarity from the planning commission, I guess is what I'm saying, or you, Paul, on that. What is their setback?
And I think from that standpoint, that's why the planning commission preferred to push it off to the city council, because they did not have that decision-making ability to offer up that compromise where city council would have that ability. Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, so any more questions from council?
Just a statement. I'd like to hear from the community before moving forward on this.
Okay.
Can I just add one more quick thing?
Yeah.
We appreciated all of the discussion, and I guess I wasn't here when the TSP was adopted in the room here, but that's the problem. That road is identified as a major collector. I mean, that's the problem, being identified as the lots backing. So I'm hoping all these folks that live on Lawrence Road were in attendance and saying, I don't want that road a major collector, and whether they were or not, I don't know. But that really is the crux of the problem, because if that road were identified as a local street, which it was when we had submitted this, you can back all you want on that road, so it's not an issue. So
Just the other way to look at it is the TSP solves the problem of people backing into the road because you as a council can prevent it. So the TSP gave you the tool in order to regulate the behavior that the members of the community are trying to prevent. And it's not unusual before new code goes in that people rush in an application. We've seen that before. And unfortunately, because of the way that our land use system requires multiple hearings in 30 days after a final reading before it goes into effect, that will continue to happen as we try and solve some of these community concerns. And so I know Oregon land use law is so complex and people have so much else going on in their lives, but we're on a clock too that limits our ability to just do something and have it go into effect the next day.
Okay. All right. So that's all the questions I have up here. So now we'll hear from some of the audience. I have one in front of me. I think,
Thank you.
yeah, Scott, let's have you come up and you're new to the planning commission, well, 3 months in. So let's hear what you got to say.
So far as what we've just heard, we heard that before. All that information was pretty much the same thing we heard. And as I sat there and looked at this, I looked at the same thing that Counselor McElroy was thinking of, when we're looking at, 3 developments right against each other. We got one that isn't anything to do with the TSP and both other sides are. No consistency, and then again, I started looking at, and some of the others started kind of swinging to my point of view about this as you have, of course, people backing out onto this road. And, being 42 years in the transportation business, I've always been taught that the most dangerous time for any vehicle is when you're backing out. Now, in the reasonable man rule, when you look at this thing, you don't think people are going to be reasonable when they travel up and down the roads. But when you put 8 houses or now 19 houses on there with kids riding bicycles, the reasonable man rule kind of just flies out the window because kids will never be reasonable. And they're going to ride their bikes up and down there. If this is still on a county road designation, it's a huge issue. I don't really want to hear about anybody's kid getting ran over on that road because of something we decided, that was a problem for me. So far as, the big thing I was really looking for is maybe a little more consistency on Lawrence Road. We make the whole thing, it's a major collector or whatever it eventually turns out to be whenever we can repair that road, because that road is in desperate need of repair. We want something that looks good too, and it's very consistent with safety out there. And that's what I was thinking about, the applicants, 90% of what the applicant provided, fine. I don't think we had an issue with any of it. It's just the properties backing onto Lawrence Road, and Lawrence Road itself is not all that it seems to be. A lot of Lawrence Road is only 1.5 lanes wide. If you go down through the curve there, go down to the gully, that's 1.5 lanes wide. That's one car at a time. And, you're starting to move people in and out of that. And first you've got 8 homes and all of a sudden you have 19 homes moving in there. Well, 19 homes times 2 cars times, you start doing the math. And there's a lot of cars moving in and out of there, and they're going to be meeting each other, coming and going to work every day, and that piece of road, that particular area right there, I don't know, did you say $23 million? Might be $23 million well spent, just to fix that. But what else was I thinking about this thing? I don't know, when we got into the traffic control, and yeah, I agree with him, 55, the basic rule on that road is an issue. But, if we build long-term, we're thinking long-term and we have to project ourselves out there. I think the most important thing we have to look at is being consistent in what we do. And if we can negotiate our consistency a little bit, I think that would be a place to go. And that's kind of why I voted to send it to you people, because I think we can't negotiate anything here. And, we run into these problems, and it started to get, the more we talked about, the more complex it gets. And you understand now how complex this one particularly is. And I would probably prefer not to have people backing onto that road at any point. We can put houses up against it like you have on 4th Street up here, where if you go half that road, there's a few houses up and down, but most of them, nobody backs out onto that road because of the pitch too, and I don't know. I'm still thinking about it.
Hey, John, who's got a question?
Go ahead. Yeah, so just for clarification, right, and for the record here.
Sure.
So the planning commission's issue is not with the proposed plan.
Sure.
It sounds to me in what I heard there, and again, I'm asking for clarification, is that maybe as a council and a city staff, we need to know what our options are to contact Clackamas County, because we're assuming that that's the developer's problem to deal with Lawrence Road when it's a county road currently, which we can't put the county's problems or their road problem on the developer in that case. If this does meet the code, out of respect for the committee, I think it's important to ask you, you know, to hear what your concerns were, but it doesn't sound like, for clarification, that it was that it didn't meet code or plan to you, that really we need to look at what our options are to get a hold of Clackamas County to get ahead of this, to change things along that roadway then.
Yes, that would be part of it. But, you know, you have to think, you have to project yourself out so far as the development up and down that, and anything between Copeland and Deuce Road there, because eventually at some point that whole thing is going to be connected. You know, might be 50 years down the trail and will be memories, but you know, we want to be very consistent about what we do as we, you know, because we're building density here, guys. And when you build density, density comes with problems, you know, and problems are people moving. And those are the things I think about, you know, urban growth boundary is just another name for density. Sure. You know.
Yeah, two quick questions. So the density is at least meeting the minimum criteria for the R1, and I really like the bigger lot sizes in this development, but
I do too.
would you feel better about backing out of a driveway that's 75 feet apart from one another as opposed to 50? Do
Well,
you have the same concern?
Yeah, you know, the TSP, I wasn't aware of it was 75 foot, you know, between driveways, but I understand it. You know,
do you feel better about backing out of a driveway that's 75 feet apart onto the same road? Because that's the new code. So if they came in and they designed it now and they reconfigured the lots width and lengths so that there was 75 feet of frontage to space the driveway 75, would you feel better about backing out onto the road?
Probably not.
Okay. And then the other question is there any code that requires you to be backing or driving forward out of a driveway onto a road that you're aware of?
Not for a single family home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know,
I completely understand the concern. I'm not trying to be dismissive of what the commission's saying. I'm just saying if they redid it under current code, the next phases could very well be the exact same thing.
Sure.
Only 75 foot spacing between driveways, still backing out onto the same road. So then at that point, when those developers come in, I don't even know if those properties have been purchased or if they're still owned by local people to be developed. But when those come in front of us, then you're not going to have anything to say about the driveway spacing at that point. Then you're going to have to focus on the speed on the road.
True.
And getting the traffic to slow down, because the fact of the matter is our new code is going to allow them to be backing out onto the same road with just a bigger distance between the driveways.
I think we had this discussion in the planning commission too. We talked about, you know, immediately trying to get, or suggesting that we bring that forward to you people and try to find out how we would go about reducing that today, if we could get away with it, or, you know, do whatever we have to do to apply for it. You know, and what can we do to make it safer? But putting more properties on that is simply not the safest move we can make. You know, if we had, you know, if it was like 4th Street, you know, where those houses back onto 4th Street, where you're just looking at their back fence of their property, I'd be fine with that. I mean, you know, people are turning out into a residential street then, and that's not an issue. But at some point, that's going to be a feeder street. I mean, it's going to be a feeder street, and there's going to be a lot of people traveling up and down. As density comes along, what are you going to get? You know, you're going to get more traffic.
Yeah, because it's connecting to the backside of Cascadia Ridge, right? All the traffic on the new phases of Cascadia Ridge that's going to be the quickest route for them to get out.
Yep, it will be.
Okay.
Or they're going to be ripping through the neighborhoods down there somewhere. I mean, you're going to have a lot of traffic going somewhere, you know?
Yeah.
Jonathan?
My question's for Taylor, I guess. Well, what are our options to get a hold of Clackamas County, just in why we're having the conversation? What would our options be involving Clackamas County? What's the relationship like with Clackamas County? I mean, the road issue is separate from, at this point, to me, it seems like we need to figure out the road and ask Clackamas County about installing speed restrictions or whatnot, change of speed zones and the development. I think they're two different things at this point, though, from what I'm identifying, even coming from you.
Yeah, the other issue I had with Lawrence Road is too, when we're developing that road, because it's the edge of the urban growth boundary, we're only developing 16 feet of a 32-foot road or a 36-foot road. Whatever that turns out to be, we're only developing half of it. You know, you're going to half of it that looks pretty good for whatever the development run is, but then it just goes right back to whatever it was, you know? And that's what I'm talking about, consistency. It's got to be, we want it to be consistent through it, you know,
Yeah.
no surprises. No surprises are good.
But what are our options, Taylor?
Are we
we
done
can-
with questions for him? So I think,
Don't we?
good, thank you.
Thank
We
you.
can reach out to the county and request that that street be added to their speed zone investigation list. But it might not need to be if it's true that it automatically becomes considered a local street in certain situations. And in that case, our request would simply be, can we install speed signs? Also, not to complicate things, the property that we're talking about is annexed into city limits. The current right of way is not annexed into city limits, and the county is requiring that they dedicate an additional 7 feet of right of way. That additional 7 feet of right of way is annexed into city limits. And so it's possible that that actually will become city right of way because it will be within our city limits. And we might be able to just go ahead and put a speed sign in, at least on that side of the street.
We just post signs and then see if they say something.
And then say sorry if they get mad. Ask for
Well, that's, yeah, that's
forgiveness.
my question
Yeah.
along this lines. Could it be a condition of approval? That this needs to be addressed and taken care of before we move forward with that property. This being that they are able to put 25 mile an hour, that they do put 25 mile an hour speed limits up.
If the county doesn't allow them to put them up, then we will have applied a condition of approval that's impossible for them to carry out. But we can reach out to the county and ask for that, indicate that that's what we want. But I'm just not sure yet where
So
those
we-
asks will
Yeah,
go.
we
but we
couldn't
can
make it a
ask.
conditional approval, but we can ask.
Yeah, I have a
Right.
couple more request forms here, so I'm gonna get to them. Mary, did you want to speak at this right here?
Are we opening the,
No, I'm still in the community.
oh, we did
comment.
do the
Yeah.
statement. We're
Yeah.
still in it. I'm sorry. It's been long. Okay.
Hello, I would please ask council to approve or deny if you would like, or to table this development only with certain conditions. Otherwise, the 8 homes would be sitting right on Lawrence Road. The front driveways would be facing Lawrence Road, and the drivers would be backing onto a busy road, as you will know. This is a very dangerous situation. The new property owners would have doors opening to small children and pets running out into the road and possibly be hurt or killed. I have seen so many near misses and accidents on this road. I recommend flag lots, having residents' homes facing away from traffic. Several people heard back from Clackamas County that our planner, Taylor Campy, did not inform the people at Clackamas County in engineering and public safety that Ms. Campy was planning on developing homes right on this very unsafe road.
Can you address your comments to the mayor without talking about staff?
Okay,
Taylor
I'm sorry.
Campy is not
Okay.
developing any
Our-
properties.
Okay,
Thank you.
got it. Our interpretation was that they were really saddened and mortified that a government official would risk the lives of local citizens and these future developments. Very unsafe practices. Lawrence Road borders along the airport on the north end near Deuce. As the planner has proposed to have Lawrence Road punch through to Deuce, one will have the same dangerous access via the north end of Lawrence Road, coming in from that direction. To Copeland, past the proposed developments and the heavily traveled road. And the blind corner again, and risking people's lives again and causing a massive amount of traffic. After I went to the town council meeting, when we had the town hall meeting last Monday, there was a lot of emails that were sent to me, and phoning, and for me and my family, as well as the other residents of Woodland Road. And they were very menacing and harassing and bullying. And so this needs to stop. I appreciate all that the planning and zoning have done for our city, as well as the council. I know in the past I've sounded like I'm not a good speaker. I'm sorry, but I apologize, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I urge the mayor and council to look into my allegations.
Can we ask you, Cold?
Yeah, hey, can I follow up, Mary, and just, I'm sorry you're getting calls and harassments that's out of line, and I just ask that people not do that, whoever's doing that, but if you could follow up with the city, would that be fine? And
Who is calling? I emailed you, but I didn't mean to be menacing at all.
There was, my other neighbors, we've had some allegations that there's situations that are happening that, yes, that we know that it's not okay to be.
It's not okay to be called a menace. That's absolutely true. I would just like to have more details. I don't know that I can't stop anybody from making a phone call.
The city, it's not okay.
Well, if somebody's from the city is calling you, please let me know, Mary, okay? Because I will handle it. But if it's somebody that's not from the city, then
You mean city staff?
yeah, if I am shocked if you feel that any city staff is being menacing when they call you, and I couldn't call you because you wouldn't give me your phone number, and I don't think any of us have your phone number. So I don't think it was city staff who called you.
Well, it's all over the Woodland Road. People are getting calls and
Well.
yeah, it's not.
All right, Tom. You wanted to speak on this issue, right? So,
Well, I guess this is basically getting to a signage problem. And being a resident of this area, not of the city per se, I've been around for almost 50 years and have been first responder to more accidents, fatal accidents, than I can imagine. Where I live, where Springwater and Metzler Park intersect, it is a god-awful corner, just like what they're talking about here. But with the added little object of Metzler Park Road, even though there are signs leading up to that corner, slow down 20 miles an hour, I've pulled 5 people from vehicles that were overturned or wrapped around a tree or on fire. And so my point is that if you have signage, how is it going to slow anybody down when I think a dozen accidents on Springwater Road. I travel Springwater Road every day. And in the last 20 years, at least a dozen fatal accidents on Springwater Road. I've been a first responder, and taking the line from Sixth Sense, I don't like to see dead people. So, and I'm not trying to make light of that. So I guess what would help with the community and with the developers, I'm not yay or nay for either side. I'm just trying to bring us perspective here from being a resident for so many years here and seeing as much as I have seen with certain concerns that were raised here that, I think that the signage is good, but the signage doesn't solve it. So there has to be something to solve it, other than just signage. So
All right, that is all I have for you. You want to speak on this one?
Do
But
you have another one?
Vincent, I got you first, so yeah, so you want to fill out a form and turn that in. Yeah, you'll need to do that. Yeah, did you want to speak on this issue or the? Okay,
How's it going? I just want to say one thing. I say, like, iterating what Tom said, you know, signage would be good and would slow down a majority of the people, but enforcement is a much different thing. And as a majority of the people, you guys know, we already spend like about 20% of our budget, or $1.2 million, on police officers. And it's not, you know, it's not as simple as being able to get more police officers. They have shortages just like everybody else. And having the signs may not equate to having the same enforcement of the signs in the area. So just as, because I think we've been on a wait list for a few more officers for quite a while now. And I don't think they're going to be coming anytime soon. So just because, you know, the signs will be there, and that is a good thing that they can change it to a 25 if it's possible that it's posted. I just don't think you'll have the enforcement to actually back up that in a timely manner, just as a point. But thank you.
I don't.
what's that?
County,
Would our officers be?
it's county.
Yeah,
County, I mean, the city officers. wouldn't.
well, it's a hard call because it's
It,
right on
it
the.
could be either
right on the
or.
route.
Yeah.
All right, that's all the forms, unless I've got one coming here.
on my way, sir.
All right.
I'll make it short.
All right. Go ahead.
This work? All right, Lawrence Road, the curve, everybody's got a problem with it. The establishment of driveways, that's another story. These gentlemen have put a lot of money and work into that. It's up to you guys to decide whether that happens or not. Either way, there's gonna be traffic from those developments on that road. I heard a $23 million statement about the cost of a bridge. Why do we need a bridge across a simple creek? I saw one point there that the slopes of the roads are gonna be 12%. You could easily put a culvert and some backfill, much cheaper than a doggone bridge. Either way, work with the county, please. Somebody work with the county. Fix that corner, fix them curves. They are wide enough for 2 log trucks to pass in opposite directions. I've driven log truck. The road is safe. It's the drivers that are unsafe. But to fix the road, to make it safer, to fix the driver's safety, it does need to get straightened out. That or get somebody to clean up the edges. The reason it's a 1-lane road is because the edges have 4 feet of debris on each side. I clean up our corner. It's wide enough for 2 log trucks. The lower part is also. Work with the county, fix the corner, work with these gentlemen. They've got good developments. Where the driveways go won't fix them corners.
Thank you.
All right, that's all the forms I have. All right, does staff have anything else to add?
I will confirm for the record that Exhibit 6 shows the comments from Clackamas County Development Engineering. We did, per standard procedure, notify them about this development.
Okay. I will now close the public hearing and reopen the city council. And at this point, we're to the, and I'm lost as our options at this point. So I'm gonna have to have a recap on our options before we can move forward on this to vote. So if we could kind of look at the responses that we have a choice of, and if Peter would weigh in on this on the, I think it was the 120-day thing he was talking about, so I get clarity as to what we're doing here.
So I think the applicant said this was deemed final on, was it
November.
November 20th.
So we have 120 days to process this application through final. Or if we have not made a decision by that date, it automatically is approved. So if we want some flexibility to have conversations with them as far as what kind of concessions they would be looking for in response to concerns from the general public, the safest course of action would be to ask them to extend the 120-day rule to a time certain. So maybe 30 more days, which would buy us an extra month. And then we would want to know what sort of concessions they were looking for. And my guess, based on what they said previously, was that they would be looking for smaller lots so they could have more lots. And the way that could conceptually work would be that none of the houses that are backing to Lawrence Road would have access to Lawrence Road. So it would be a fence, and there would likely be a second road internally in the development. So there are ways it could be done, but it would result, because they'd be giving up the lots necessary. I mean, parts of the lots necessary to the road. They would probably want smaller lots, and it would probably be, they want more lots because larger lots are worth more money than smaller lots. So at some point, in their mind, it would probably be worth it to them to go with that. So the one way to do it would be to pause the clock, have the conversation. What they proposed was approval of this, and then they would do a separate application for an alternative design. And that's kind of where we're at. I don't think we're at a point where we're ready as where you guys as the council are ready to impose a condition tonight. So it's probably going to need to be one of the other two.
Okay.
Or approval will be the third.
120 days would be March 19th. Approximately.
Yes, and I think the appeal period has to have passed. Is that also by that date too? So
It would be a final decision by council. And then there's the I believe it's 21 days to appeal to LUBA. It's either 14 or 21. I should know because I have 3 cases of LUBA right now. But I'm not the plaintiff.
Yeah, I'd like to comment that I think that working through that in conversation, I feel comfortable that we've established that the real issue is not with their proposed plan or along that lines. That I think the more abundant issue to me is that we need to direct staff to start working with Clackamas County to address the road. I don't think the development is the issue in this case, and from what I think we were able to solve. I think it's a county issue and trying to figure out how we can make that road more safe, which is, I think, unrelated to this approval.
I'll just note that I would wonder or worry about the logistics of conducting that. How would we go about conducting that negotiation? Would the applicants come back to another meeting with the council between now and, then submitting, whatever hearing you would officially consider and approve? I think we'd want to work all of that out. I'm just saying, I'm just thinking out loud here. The cleanest thing in my mind is to approve it as is. We know it's legally defensible. We know it's something the applicant agrees to, but we haven't heard from the applicant yet about how they would feel about extending the clock and pursuing that negotiation now. So
Can we ask him?
Yeah. So would the applicant please step up here for a minute?
The applicant hasn't had an opportunity to discuss that as a possibility. Could we take a maybe 5-minute recess to just give us a chance to discuss that?
Yeah, I think a 5-minute recess in general would be a nice idea, right, at this point. So let's
Thank
take a
you.
5-minute order, please.
There's no code.
If everybody sit down, please. Carrie, don't make me have to spank you. All right. Now, right back at the fun part. You were at that, you want to put that back up on the screen one more time, if you could, the options?
We need to hear from the developers.
Yep. And the developers had a chance to talk.
And my name's Tracy Brown. Yeah, we talked about it, and actually we've already done some preliminary work. And we talked to Taylor about it, maybe a month ago or a few weeks ago. And the reality is, any redesign is probably going to result in more lots. And more lots means more traffic. The developer is very comfortable with the design he has today, since it complies with the code, and he really likes those bigger lots. He thinks those are a good asset to the housing market in Estacada. With the development, there will be a collection of SDCs. We'd encourage the city to consider targeting those SDCs to making improvements on that road. And there may be things like speed calming, signage, such, rather than just having it go into the slush fund, so to speak. I guess with that, he'd really like to have a decision tonight. We really think it is approvable because it meets the code. So we don't really see a big benefit to delaying the decision, because I think what you're going to see in the future, you're probably not going to like any better. You're probably going to like it worse. And I don't think it's going to satisfy the neighborhood because it's probably going to result in more lots. And the reason for that is with the redesign, there's going to be more roads. And the other way you're going to be able to pay for those extra roads is with smaller lots and more lots. So that's his position. He'd like to have you approve it tonight.
Okay.
Going forward, we would consider, if it made sense, looking at other options. If the city could make a proposal maybe to us as to how he would be compensated for some of that extra work, we'd entertain that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Peter.
So there's one condition that you could impose that wouldn't change this, but might satisfy the community. And that would be if you required, because there are 8 lots fronting that road. If you required them to have shared driveways, those driveways would be 30 feet wide, and it would allow the people that lived in those houses to be able to turn around. So they were driving out, fronting so that you were both turning in and exiting facing the road instead of backing. I suppose if they had a single driveway, they could turn around too, but it would be much easier with a shared driveway.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of a new idea. If you look at the plan, there would be really no way to have all 8 lots shared driveways. And if you did have those 4 lots in the center sharing driveways, I don't think there'd be any way you could turn around on somebody else's property. It'd be quite an easement that'd be required to allow somebody, basically it'd be a parking lot in the front yard of people's homes. And so I'm not sure it's a feasible solution. And I'd hate to have the plan designed on the fly, so to speak, without thought and conditions, imposed that are really maybe unfeasible moving forward. So I guess we're wanting to reject that option.
Right, so back up to the options on the table right now. You saw what they are, so can I get a motion on the table?
A motion to approve the conditions as presented by staff, including the updated conditions.
Okay.
And I just want to clarify that we don't have to do any formal amendment here, but we can go ahead and add in that heading clarifying for them which of those conditions apply to the county right of way.
Can we, one of the conditions that was brought up is putting a stop sign where there is no stop sign.
Adding that condition in,
Mhm.
if the applicant agrees with that, then yeah, we can go ahead and add that in. I'm
The
seeing
applicant suggested it.
nodding, and that was to add a stop sign, eastbound stop sign on both Clayton Drive and Gilbert Lane, and I'm seeing nodding, so we'll go ahead and add those in there.
All right, so does that satisfy?
That satisfies what I'm talking about.
Okay,
I'll second it to get it on the table.
first and second, and let's do a roll call vote on this, Cindy.
Yes.
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 No.
No.
Okay, and just
Okay.
for clarification, sorry, those conditions that apply to the Clackamas County right of way are 16 through 27.
All right. And we are done with all that. We are now going into council business. Parks and Recreation Land Solutions Primary Work Plan Discussion. And I will hand that to you, Taylor.
Yeah, and I will hand it off over to Alan, who's with us on Zoom.
Hello, good evening, council. So can you all see my presentation slides?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, great. So tonight I'm going to present this parkland and open space dedication project. Just give kind of a high level overview of the issues behind the project. Basically, the aim of this project is to develop standards that help ensure that the city has enough parks and recreational space and facilities for the community as it grows. So ideally, by the end of tonight's discussion, we'll get some feedback from council on the following questions. So we'd like to know how involved you'd like to be in the development of these park and recreation land solutions, and also whether there's any specific information or input that council would like us to gather as we do the project. And I'll come back to these questions at the very end when we talk about this. But before we go on, just to kind of outline what I'm going to do, I'll give a little context to the work that we've done so far and the meetings that we've held so far, and then talk a little bit about the weaknesses in our current development code that's related to parkland dedication, and finally discuss the city's policy goals that support the requiring of dedication of parkland and open space at the time of land division. Okay. So, just a little meetings context and background. So the need for more park facilities has come up in planning commission meetings last year. It started coming up in the first half of the year. And then in June, planning commission directed staff to look into how other cities require developers to dedicate park land at the time of land division. And so we were given till August. So they gave us 2 months to research what other jurisdictions do and then report back. So we collected and analyzed relevant code sections from 6 West Coast cities. 4 of those are in Oregon, 1's in Washington, 1's in California. There's also a summary of this research in the memo in your packet. I think that memo was dated October. If there's any questions about that, I can point you to that. So after 2 meetings with planning commission, we held a third to include Parks and Rec, because this is obviously in their wheelhouse. We wanted to loop them in. And at that joint workshop, we presented our research again, fielded questions, and recorded feedback from them. And then finally, there was one more very brief update with planning commission in October, just a short discussion, and we fielded some more questions from them. And so just a little bit about the background, just the primary issue that started this whole discussion is basically that our code right now doesn't have requirements for developers of standard subdivisions to put in parks or set aside open space. The code only has parkland dedication requirements for a specific type of subdivision that I'm sure council's familiar with, the planned development or PD, PUD. But we don't have the same requirements for regular subdivisions. So this results in all these subdivision applications coming in, and there's no requirements or regulations for making sure that enough park space gets set aside or developed. And as you can see, section 116 there, in the parks, the developer is encouraged but not required. So basically, we just have a suggestion for the developer. We don't have anything stronger than that. We're trying to address that. And so we'll look at some of the comprehensive plan conflicts that we have by not requiring this. So not requiring park and open space dedication at the time of land division, it directly conflicts with elements of comp plan chapter 5. So we have policy 8 here, require developers to dedicate a portion of new subdivisions for parks with facilities open to the public. So as I mentioned, we don't have that as of now. And then the implementation point, number 3, city will amend its subdivision ordinances to require dedication of public parklands and new housing development. So that's basically what we're aiming to do, but haven't done yet. And now we have comp plan goals here from chapter 5. Just want to show here that requiring park and open space dedication at the time of land division is very clearly supported by the goals and objectives of our comp plan. So see the goals: conserve open space, protect natural cultural resources, satisfy the recreational needs of citizens, identify open spaces, scenic and historic areas, ensure adequate open space to meet the needs of residents, and provide an adequate amount of parkland for local use and variety of recreation facilities. So we can see we have a clear mandate from the comp plan for establishing these land dedication requirements. And then looking to the city's park and master plan, city's parks master plan, this is from 2018. It also includes several recommendations for improving the current system of land dedication. So I pulled out 3 of these recommendations that relate directly to this issue. We have recommendation B2 here: pursue 2 to 3 new neighborhood parks by 2035 based on adopted dedication standards. And so a neighborhood park is a smaller park, 2 to 5 acres. They're usually nestled within the neighborhoods. As opposed to community parks, which are intended for the entire city, they're 8 or more acres. So in order for the city to accomplish this recommendation, we need more land and or money toward buying land, and requiring developers to contribute land or fees at the time of land division would be a straightforward way to do that. All right, so a couple more recommendations here. E2, develop criteria and guidelines for land transfer. And E3, develop policy for land dedication. Both of these are basically saying that the city should do exactly what we're trying to get done here, which is develop requirements for land dedication. And so finally, back to the questions that I posed at the beginning. We would like to know how involved council would like to be in the development of these solutions. Is this something that we delegate to, or that you decide that gets delegated to planning commission, the Parks and Rec committee, and staff to deal with? Would you like to stay directly involved via joint work sessions and briefings? Or is there some other level of involvement that you would like to have with this? And then secondly, does council have any other information needs for this project? So that would be like asking for some specific research, so something for staff to find out relating to park and open space dedication before you made a decision about what those requirements would be? Is there any kind of specific stakeholder engagement activities that you'd like to do? Any outreach to the community that you'd like to see, such as surveys or something else? So yeah, we would love to get some guidance on these questions. And also, if you have any questions or comments for planning staff about this project, we'd love to hear those too. And I will pause at this point for questions, comments.
Okay, great, thank you. Questions from council, and we'll start over on this side. Let's go with Judah.
Yeah, so what you're, just for clarification here, you're asking, do we want to be involved in what happens, like what park space is created or what park space is purchased or how it's designed? Is that just for clarification?
Factor,
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
question. So I think it's more about the process at this point. So we're gonna have to go through process of drafting. Well, actually, first we would do more research on what possible amendments to the code would look like in order to adopt these requirements, and then we would put them in front of planning commission. They'd end up in front of you. So yeah, there's that whole process that we'll have to go through before we would actually be deciding which parcels would be dedicated at the time of land division, like for specific developments. So yeah, this is more just on a kind of a higher level process level.
Yeah, can I chime in there also? Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
At this point, what this will look like is really broad, because what's been discussed among the Planning Commission and the Parks and Rec Commission is a range of potential ways that we could tackle the issue of the concern of not having enough park and recreation space as the city continues growing. And so I'm thinking of it as kind of 3 buckets of strategies that the city could use to address those, and there might be more. And we might not want to use each of these buckets of strategies, but one is amending the development code to, set or change requirements for developers to contribute actual park land or contribute fees in lieu as they develop subdivisions. The next bucket would be, in my mind, looking at our SDC fee schedule. So how much money are we collecting with each house that we build? Right now, we do collect SDCs for parks, but are we allocating those SDCs in a way that we want? Should we be collecting more? We could dig into those questions. And then the third bucket is, our parks master plan. And that's where we have designated areas in the city with specific park plans that we intend to put some of those funds toward. And so does that plan need to be updated or amended? And if so, how in depth do we want to get with that? So we're really kind of at the super front end, high level stage of this. And the Planning Commission and Parks and Rec Commission have both indicated, willingness and energy to spend their time and attention on this, but it's ultimately something that the council will make a decision on. And we don't want them spending all this time on things that ultimately you all wouldn't want to approve. So it's important to know how involved you want to be and what your concerns and priorities are going to be.
Paul?
I think Mike.
I just wanted to comment. I'd like to stay directly involved via joint work sessions on that. And as far as research goes, is any of the proposals that's come from the Planning Commission to make the partitions and the subdivisions match the PUD proportionally?
No, we really haven't gotten very far into like what anyone thinks should change, any specific recommendations on what to do or change. But some ideas have been floated. I don't think that idea was floated because the requirements for PUDs are pretty significant.
Yeah.
And I would have to go back through our files to see the list of potential recommendations that have come out, but it's all been kind of just, we should look at this potential strategy or this potential idea. But yeah, everything's been sort of, these are options of things we could look at if we go ahead and spend the time to dig into the details on everything.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
and I'm willing to be involved. But I've kind of coming from a different angle here. I think we've got some great folks on our commissions now. Having sat in on the planning commission and just seeing the passion for this project already. I think that they're going to run with this. I would hate to have us come in and slow things down by trying to coordinate 3 groups together to try to keep this thing moving forward. I think if we turn it over to them, delegate to the planning commission, Parks and Rec, and the staff, I think it'd be a more efficient machine than having us involved in the process.
Charity?
About that.
I mean, I know it's rough to have a joint work session. I don't want to go to any more meetings, and I mean, we're already stretched thin, but I personally would like to stay directly involved, especially since we've had so much public comment regarding our parks and our green spaces. So I personally would like to be involved in that, in those joint work sessions. I know it's a lot, but there's a lot of changes, so.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Got to show up for them.
Jonathan?
Yeah, my voice is with you guys on that. Paul, I do appreciate what you're saying, and I do, to be clear, I do trust the committees and the commissioners and the chairs. I think that they're outstanding, but at the end of the day, they're not the one that answers for the decisions that are made for this community, to the community. And then on that note, I'd also like to comment that, I mean, we're revisiting conversations right now that was voted down by this council. Okay, so that I think needs to come to an end. If the council votes it down, I don't think it's a revisit at another time when our plan didn't work out. I think that removes the plan from the table. I don't, like in specifically commenting on Campanella. Now I understand that there's feasible, but I don't think it's even an option on the table in my mind because it was already deemed by council no. So there is no revisiting it. So I absolutely think we need to be directly involved, because if that was to roll back, that would fall on our shoulders.
Yeah.
If I could just say something, I just want to clarify that this doesn't really have anything to do with the splash pad or Campanella or that issue at all. Just they're pretty separate.
It's the precedence that it sets, though. I understand that this instance that's not what you're talking about, Alan, and I do appreciate your work, to be clear. But I'm saying, like, going forward in the future, if we were to have another one of these cases where something that we said, nah, don't put it there, the community doesn't want it, and then it rolled back to you guys and they decided, well, that's the most feasible spot, even though it was already a decision made. I mean, we're setting the precedence for that to happen in the future. I don't like it.
Jerry, do you have anything you want to add?
I guess I'm confused. We would still be the deciding factor at the end of this.
Absolutely. Yes,
if
you
we
would be
choose-
yes, you would be the body that adopted whatever recommendations came or denied or changed. But we're just wondering along the way, if you want frequent check-ins, if you're happy seeing it every once in a great while, if you want to be directly involved at the meetings and the workshops.
So basically what I'm getting at is this is just whether how involved we want to be in this process, not whether, the planning commission or Parks and Rec can just approve putting a splash pad in Mike's backyard. That's not going to happen. We would still be, regardless of what the outcome of this, we would still be the deciding factor. We would still be the decision makers. This
Yes,
is just
100% yes.
procedures. I personally would want to be involved in the planning of this. I don't mind the extra meetings, going to workshops, but honestly, I mean, I do have trust and faith in the people that we put in these commissions. So, but again, I would like to be involved.
And Mike, you got another question?
The only thing that the involvement gets for me is that we've gotten feedback from the commissions that they put all this work into something, then it comes before us, and then only then they realize that it's something we disagree with. If we're part of the joint work sessions, we're going to avoid that. They're going to have our feedback in real time. They're going to present something that's already palatable to the council that's more likely to pass. And then we're not spinning their wheels, wasting their time. I respect their opinion on everything, but they're not going to be able to read my mind of what I like or don't like, or my feedback on something. So if I could give that to them early on, when they're shaping the plan for what they're doing, it's going to go a lot smoother later on when it comes before the council, was my thinking, for being involved in the joint work sessions.
Yeah, I also think, like, how can you answer the question? So if the community member emails you, you have to play, let me get back to you and sort. I would rather be directly involved, to where I could tell them, like, from sitting through this meeting or this series of conversations, that this is the direction it looks like it's going, or this is the feel of the council on it, whether it's split or not. I just want to be able to answer to people with the most accurate information possible.
Yeah, and I'm in support. I'm good with this as well too, being involved. The second question on there, any other needs for the project? I know in working with the planning commission, one thing that gets brought up a few times is having a larger park, like a sports facility, something along those lines, that we've got places for our students, youth to play baseball, soccer, a bigger fields project. So I would want to make sure that we are keeping that in our sights with this project as well too.
And Peter.
Just a couple of observations, some of them from here and some of them from other jurisdictions, that might help inform how you guys decide to do this. So there's a difference between the SDCs, which is the amount they pay for their impact on our current parks, and the need to build future kind of citywide parks, which is one of the things people are talking about. There's a difference between that and then a set aside of land in a subdivision, which could be done by requirement of a certain percentage, or it could be done, someone mentioned fee in lieu, which is really how you would get to the larger community parks. Because one of the trends that I'm seeing are people seeking to build something immediately adjacent to the UGB, but outside of the UGB, which can be done under certain county zoning, and it's because the cost of the dirt is so much less expensive. So you have the ability to put in field turf or other services. There's a difference in my mind between open space and parks. So open space might be the area of the HOA that is open to HOA members, like what we'd refer to as the commons that they use. And maybe they'd have equipment there. It's for kind of the members of their HOA. They maintain it, we don't, whether it's natural or whether they're getting it mowed and using it themselves. Parks are open to the public, anyone in the public, whether they live in Estacada or not. And I've just been seeing a lot more controversy in parks, that people draw a distinction between parks and open space. HOAs are very comfortable with open space that they can regulate. They're less comfortable with city parks. I think with, particularly in communities where people have a lot of kids, there's more and more of a desire for a location with a lot of parking where they can have 3 kids soccer games going at once or whatever. And so that having a fee in lieu instead of requiring a park dedication, in my mind, makes people a lot more comfortable. It's within their control. And it seems, one of my observations is that land that people kind of saw as their common area is a city park, and maybe they didn't know it was a city park, and that's creating some kind of tension. So I think just drawing that distinction between so that everybody knows what they're getting on the front end, and you guys have maximum flexibility instead of developers in order to do something that meets city needs.
Yeah.
Might make sense.
No, it's good. I like that, Peter. And I'm just going to add in the end of this. My take on this is that we are all involved as a council. I've seen too much over the years where the council is, it's not really handing it over or not being a part of it. It's just that we've lost track of why we're here. All of us counselors were elected for a reason, and I hate to see us hand that off every single time something comes along. There's a new committee, a new commission. Let's give them the responsibility. We've got too much on our plate. Well, when we got elected, we wanted that plate. We said to the people, you know, we will stand for you no matter what. We will stand up here and make decisions because that is what you want us to do. Where did we forget that? We didn't. We remember. And now we need to start acting that part. So handing off control of any kind, anywhere, is not what I want to do. I want to be a part of the process from beginning to end. The committee and commissions answer to us and suggest to us. That is how it works. I want to have another workshop so we understand that again, because I think we've forgotten some of this along the way. If we can schedule one, that would be great. But in this process, I think we should look at our SDCs. Developers are coming here because our SDCs are affordable. Maybe it's time to start raising those SDCs. I've looked at ours comparatively speaking, and we're in the mid-range, but yet we're the highest area that everybody wants to live in. So you think there's a problem here? I do. I think maybe we should be looking at STCs as an issue. You know, let's start raising the parks STCs to afford these bigger park models that you're talking about that have the soccer fields, that have everything that we want. Don't be handing it away to little park spots in the middle of these communities like he's talking about, versus actually planning something like this. So I think we're on the right track, but I think we've got to get back in line as a council. And the people depend on us to do that. So my preference is that we stay in control of the parks and take a look from beginning to end and be a part of the process. But I thank all of you for weighing in on that anyway. Are there any more add-ins at this point?
I'd just like to add in, that second question, does council have other information? As we go along in the process, I would like to have either stakeholder or public survey, something to get the community involved so we can get some feedback from the community as to what they're wanting to see. So
Sounds good. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Can I just want to get a feel for making sure, want to get a feel for how you all feel about this. So heavy involvement of the council throughout the process of developing and evaluating these alternatives, engaging the community. Is this something where having a joint workshop all together right at the beginning kicks us off? Everyone gets an idea, understands what the council's priorities are. If needed, we could, if it feels like everyone's not on the page, we could schedule another joint workshop for the next meeting. If it feels like everyone's on the same page, maybe we could have, just the planning commission and or Parks and Rec Commission meet next, and then another workshop altogether, kind of sprinkle it through. I'm just thinking about, to Paul's point, it will move faster for scheduling reasons if some of the real nitty gritty detail kind of groundwork stuff can get done between council meetings. Or we can just make sure that all of the meetings are with the council. Or we could decide that as we go along.
Yeah, I personally visualize like maybe 3 joint sessions, one at the beginning to get a criteria for people to be working on, one midway, and then one before it came before the council. So there wasn't a surprise when the vote came up at the council, is what I envisioned, but I'm open to suggestions on it too.
Yeah.
I think that's a good scenario to play it out along the way.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think let the first one, especially let the council give you the directive, give you the direction that we'd like you to go, and then let creative constraint go from there after we kind of task you. Right? Because I mean, that was an issue we had with dealing with something else. So I think we set the parameters, then you guys come back to us, we'll check in and make sure it's aligning with our thoughts. And then, like you said, I think it's really important, out of respect for the commissions, that we meet with them before the vote would come in, so that they're not caught off guard or it doesn't come across as disrespectful or whatnot.
And I think too, in the future, maybe taking a look at all the different systems, versus just the Parks and Rec, even though this is the issue we're bringing to the table. Sure. This is really just one of many. We've had that. We've been in these situations that we stay involved all the way through from beginning to end. So, it saved you too. I mean, this is you guys getting the brunt of it, right? So if we're all on the same page from the beginning to the end, then we're not going to have these issues anymore. And I think we've got to concentrate on that point. So yeah, I would hope that would be the case. But is there anything you need from us at this point, or?
I don't think so. I feel clear about our direction and next steps. Alan, anything else?
No, this is all really good feedback. I also feel really clear. Yeah, this is great. Thanks for all that feedback.
Yeah. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. All right, I'm at the next citizen and community group comment. I don't have any in front of me. Is there people that like to hand them in now? Yeah, if you've got one in there, we can do you first. That's all right.
I just want to say that I thoroughly appreciate you doing what your job is. And I loved your comment, Mayor, on, getting back to the basics. I have such a strong love for government, and to watch you come together, that is what it's all about. And doing what we have voted you to do has just reassured everyone in this community that we're finally getting our voices heard, and we appreciate you finally doing what we've asked you to do and what we voted you in to do. So I just really say thank you.
Thank you. All right, Tim May.
So I'll try to make it quick and be out of here. I live in the Lakeshore neighborhood, just came down to bring up apartments again. So I've done what Taylor Campy recommended I could do, and that's gone through the EMC downtown chapters of 1626 in order to try to protect our waterfront. 1626.20 uses, or 020 uses permitted outright subject D2 section reads as follows: the residential density of the development is not less than 16 dwellings per units per acre, and the word "and" implies that there is more to follow. And in order to determine what is missing, you must refer to EMC 1660.070. It offers mathematical formulas for clarification. Subsection A addresses multifamily dwellings, but makes no mention of the D zone specifically. It does discuss R3, NCR, and C2 zones, then sets the following standards. The minimum must be at least 50% of the maximum. Those zones set the standard at 15% minimum, or 15 units minimum, and 30 units maximum. The D zone is developed, or is the only deviation from the 15 minimum that I have found. And it could be a typing error. However, if 16 is the minimum, then 32 should be the maximum. If there are 2.72 acres, then the maximum should be the maximum of 87 units has been exceeded by 12. This must be rectified to proceed. After doing the research, I would strongly urge a forensic audit on the EMC zoning codes. There are multiple irregularities, inconsistencies, not to mention references to non-existent codes, such as the one cited in the staff report and recommendations to the Design Review Committee on page 4 of 13, which was taken directly from the EMC. And it says, per EMC 1676.010 subsection Q19, there isn't one. The audit would clearly make Taylor's job easier and would help avoid future embarrassments to the staff or city of Estacada. I have packets for everybody so that you can verify what I'm saying. There are lots of problems with our zoning codes. Quite frankly, we're over. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Just give those to staff over here and we can give those.
Can do.
All right. Next, I have Vincent.
I just wanted to touch on the SDC issue. I'm really glad that we're moving forward on this issue. I know from the parks perspective, we really want to encourage the city do strong SDCs to make sure we're getting enough money to actually truly invest in our park system and like building good community parks for everybody in the community. And I'm just want to say thank you, and I'm glad that we're moving forward on this issue so that we can make sure developers like Sean said, we're not just giving them the keys to the castle. We want to ensure that they're really paying into the community and helping us invest in our own community through the SDCs. So I'm glad we're moving forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's all the forms I have in front of me. Are we ready to move on? All right. Next, I have the mayor and council reports. So I will start off with Jerry on the far end.
I've been thinking a lot lately. A little over 2 years ago, I really put it upon myself to take emotion out of my decisions up here. But just more and more of these decisions that you have to put some emotion into them. You have to put some, we're passionate people about our city, and this decision tonight, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for not making me the odd man out voting no against the subdivision. I really appreciate that. But, I know that road, I've traveled that road, for years, having friends live on that road. And I just can't see, I know that with the new TSP, it wouldn't be 19 homes, but looking at that plan, all I could picture were those 19 driveways coming onto Lawrence Road. And I really want you guys to understand that everybody up here is very passionate about this city. There should be no question about that. We might have different opinions, different things, but we're all passionate about this city. We all want what's best for this city, and we're part of this community. Every decision that we make is not just from the perspective of a counselor. It's from the perspective of a community member. I thank you guys all for coming here. Those of you that are regulars to this, I really appreciate seeing your faces. And I thank staff for all the hard work that you do. And thank you, counselors, for the great discussion that we have. I really appreciate it. There's no real infighting. I love the discussion that we have, but thank you guys all.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Appreciate all the work that went into the presentations, and for the staff members that stayed late to give those presentations, and just give everyone the opportunity. If anyone ever has a question about the way, I know no matter which way you vote on anything up here, half the people in the town are going to hate you for your decision, and you're going to be going against what the whole town wants. If anyone ever wants an explanation of the way I vote on something, I'll make myself available outside of here at any time to explain my position on anything. And you may not agree with me after that, but at least I'll take the time to explain it to you where I'm coming from. Thank everyone for coming.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming tonight. And I want to, echo what you said. If you have questions about my decision, you can email me, you can find me. And most of you know where I live. So, but I appreciate you, Jerry. I appreciate your thought process. And honestly, if I had my druthers, I wouldn't want any more homes in Estacada. I wish I could say, don't build anymore. I really do. When I got on council, that was one of the first things I said. I'm like, how can we stop all this growth and development? This is getting out of hand. And it's kind of like, well, this is above your pay grade. So, I mean, it's frustrating. I email, and I would encourage other people to email your congressman, email your commissioners, email your state representatives. If you want land use stuff to change, I mean, I can do what I can in Estacada, but I'm bound, and it's very frustrating. These decisions are really gut wrenching. Like Jerry said, a lot of emotion goes into them, and it sucks. With that said, we had our town hall, and I think it went okay. Got a lot of feedback from the community, and hopefully we'll get some more feedback. So perhaps next time it won't be, as short or as stilted. I'm hoping that some of the kinks can get worked out, but it was just our first stab at it, and just a little trial and error and see what works, what doesn't, and we'll get rid of what doesn't and take some suggestions from the community and move forward with that. And hopefully next time we have a much better turnout, and I think with some more planning and some more some preparation, we can get a better turnout. But I was actually really impressed that staff was able to pull off a town hall, and we had discussed it in the beginning of January at a workshop, and then it happened in less than a month, which for government work is rapid fast. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that happening, and I look forward to more town hall meetings. And thanks again for everybody coming out tonight. Really appreciate it.
I just want to say, I look forward to them too. I thought we started off at the town hall very well. We look forward to the next one when our mayor can be healthy and be able to join us, but definitely thank Charity for standing up or stepping up and facilitating it as well too. You did a great job up there. But thanks also for the great discussion here tonight, for the folks that showed up. I think at that planning or the design committee meeting, a couple people said it's this involvement of the community is what we need. That's what's going to help shape this community, is the involvement of folks early and often. And I just appreciate that. That helps the city, that helps us as well too. So just thanks for all the input, and really do appreciate the staff for the prep work that you guys do, staying late here, helping us through all this stuff as well too. Much appreciated.
Okay, Sean.
Yeah, I'd like to just say thank you for coming, especially the new faces, but the guys that are here, the guys, gals that are here every week in and week out, like, it really means a lot. As we keep saying, we do value your guys' opinions, and we do care, and we're trying to make the best decisions we can for this community. I thought tonight was a really great discussion, even though there was intense and there was disagreements and things like that. I think that I like to echo Jerry that nobody up here is trying to do something that doesn't help this community. You're screwed if you do, and you're screwed if you don't sometimes, unfortunately. But we're doing our best for you, and the only way we can give you our best is for you to keep showing up and telling us what you need and what adjustments that we can make along the way. So I do appreciate those of you that are here. And I'd like just to remind you to raise the standard of excellence. What you don't like, address. Don't just come up here with problems. We love to hear those, but come with solutions and options with us too. Come ready to discuss things with us or email us. I would like to make myself available, just like Councilman McElroy did, that if there's something that I vote on that you would like to know why I weigh in what direction I do, I'm available to talk about it as well. Whether you like my answer or not, I can't help that, but I will make myself available to talk to you. I do care. And I'd like it to be known to the staff and stuff, like, I know you guys have been taking a lot of fire. We do appreciate your work. We have questions and things like that, and we're trying to help steer the ship better and be able to answer to the people that are asking those questions. So as we ask more from you and stuff like that, please don't take it personal. Sometimes constructive criticism is a blessing in disguise. Ask me how I know. So anyway, thank you guys for coming tonight. I really do appreciate you all.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot of inspirational stuff at this table. First off, I want to thank staff. They did a lot. They put up with a lot from all of us, I'm sure. Peter, Sadie, way over there in the corner, falling asleep. I know, it's okay. You guys are my family anymore. So I don't know how to get by a night. I don't even sleep at night anymore because I'm so worried if I'm doing the right thing, if I'm thinking about the right people, if you're all safe in your beds and your families are safe. So when I say to you, my inspiration for this job and everything that I do is you, I mean it, because you are the reason I did this job. And now I don't know what else to do but this job, because that's how much I care about this community. So know that everything we do going forward is always going to be about the best interest for you, your families, your future. Knowing that, I think you'll feel pretty good about this council that sits up here, because that's how we feel about you. So I thank you for that. Next, we're going to go into executive session. So I don't think you want to stick around for that one, but if you do, that's okay too.
You can't stick around for executive session.
Yeah. Well, you took comes back in.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So now we will go into executive session. I will close the Estacada City Council, give everybody a chance to leave the room, and I will read this. Then we will get started. Thanks for staying. Yeah.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yep, have a good night.
Thank you, Taylor.
Night, Taylor. Night,
Thank you.
Brett.
Good night, all.
Thanks, guys.
Night, Alan.
All right, we've got everybody out of the room. Close the doors, please. Thank you. All right. I will now read a real property transaction, ORS 19. Executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192-660, which allows the council to meet in executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of session and previously announced. The decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the room. So that said.
My grandson got to go home today, so I'm really happy.
Ah, yeah.
He's been in the hospital. It'll be 4 weeks tomorrow that he's been in the hospital. But he's doing good.
Good.
Yeah.
At least that.
I don't know if anybody's coming back in or not. Did they all go home?
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, you want to stick around for this eventful moment?
All right, so we'll just start the recording.
All right.
Yeah,
All right. So do I have a motion on the floor?
I move to direct the city manager to complete negotiations for acquisitions of property easement within limits discussed in executive session.
Second.
First and second, let's do roll call on this one, please.
Yes.
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 Aye.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, that done. Next meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everybody. Wow.